And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it is your Friday roundtable. How's everybody doing? We're talking about free speech. I mean, look what's going on in Miami, Russia right now. I call it Miami, Russia at this point. So let's get into it. Friday roundtable. There's a lot of content going on. And this is quite interesting, this case that's going on in Miami right now, where two police officers were actually summoned to go to someone's home. They went to a residence in Miami in response to a social media post. And apparently some critical opinions about the mayor. And, the question is this hate speech? And if so, what is hate speech? Because even critical speech or even something that is derogatory is protected under First Amendment speech. So this is important. Why? Because it's not isolated just to Miami. This could spread throughout the entire country. We see similar things going on in England, and our practices and what goes on in the UK are very similar, Western culture. So, John, let's jump into it. Marlon, good morning. Friday roundtable, everybody. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, interesting what's happening here. We've been watching what's been going on in the UK, how the real attack on freedom of speech in there. But they don't have the United States Constitution like we do. They don't have their God-given protected rights that are protected by a document like the Constitution. So we've been watching it, and it's scary. Like, so for a country that says they're a free society, to criticize, to police or investigate opinions, it's getting pretty wild. So, and it's here in America too. I don't think Miami Beach is something that's just for that area. Like, I think it's happening all over the country. It's happened to this podcast in particular. And there's no political partisanship around this either. It doesn't matter if the mayor is a Republican. It doesn't matter if the mayor is a Democrat. What we've been seeing is that the mayors are now labeling anybody who disagrees with them as domestic terrorists, as dangerous. The police forces are going along with this, and they're really starting to forget the oath that they swore to the United States Constitution. And so when you make a Facebook post or you make any post, understand this. This is protected activity under your First Amendment, right? Now, if you threaten somebody, that is not free speech. That is a threat. That is a crime. Totally different if you threaten harm towards someone. But to criticize the policies of a police department or to criticize the policies of a politician, a mayor, your city council, that is not only your God-given right, it's your duty as an American to vocalize and not to shirk your responsibility and to put your thoughts and your ideas out there into the world. Because if you don't do it, who's going to do it for you? No one. I mean, this is how we get better as a society. This is how we get better as a nation. I forget who said it. I think it was maybe Benjamin Franklin, where he said that, a healthy society is a society that is in constant debate, and that's what we're seeing from our elected officials on both sides is they're trying to shut down debate and they're using their police forces to intimidate you. And this is the problem with politicized law enforcement. We consistently say it on this network that policing should be apolitical. It's only the law that should matter. It shouldn't matter who your mayor is. Shouldn't matter if your mayor is Zohran Mamdani or if your mayor is Rudy Giuliani. If they come to you and they're like, "Hey, this guy said XYZ about me on Instagram, and I want you to go investigate him," should be like, no. It's protected First Amendment activity. That is American right. There's nothing to investigate here. This isn't a crime. And we're not going to label someone as dangerous or a domestic terrorist because of their use of their First Amendment. And unfortunately, that is what's happening in this country. And, people are already afraid to give their opinions here. As Americans, it's sad to say, but like, you know, I remember a different time in this country, and it wasn't that long ago. And I remember a different generation of men who really weren't afraid to vocalize their opinions. But that has changed significantly in the last 20 years. People are afraid to push back at ideas that they know are infactual, that they know are false, that they know are lies. And we have no clearer evidence than what happened around the George Floyd incident and what happened during COVID. People were afraid to give their opinions, and they stayed silent, and they were self-censoring. And now, add law enforcement into the mix, showing up at your door. You're gonna. It's the what is happening here is they're attempting to chill free speech. They're attempting to chill criticism, and they're attempting to have us willingly give up our right to our First Amendment.
All right. Morning, guys. Morning, chat. Happy Friday. I don't know where exactly this week went, but here we are. It's another weekend. Yeah, I'm gonna say that there's a lot to talk about this, and this isn't the first time the mayor has tried to squash free speech. By the way, that mayor is he's very wacky, as we'll see as we go along. And I'm also going to say that this, like John said, this has been happening all over the Western world since certainly since the scamdemic, you know, in particular England, but it's happened here too. We've had a couple incidents that have made that have gone viral on social media, where cops were sent to people's homes for speech they made on the internet. And we're talking speech that wasn't threatening, you know. This is a thing now because they are trying to quell free speech, and we've come to a point in society where people are starting to wake up and realize the game, you know, and they don't want you to realize that, because that means we stop infighting and start teaming up and realizing who the true problems are. And as we've talked about in a couple of episodes, a lot of what you're seeing on the ground are conditions being laid to make us infight more and to think of each other as the enemy, whereas where the real enemies plunder, you know, your country and are making life really miserable for all of us. Yeah. But we'll get into that as we go along. And again, we're glad that you joined us this morning.
All right, good morning. Well, listen, the problem that I see is that I believe in some ways that the limitations and boundaries of First Amendment speech have already been planted. The seed has been planted, because even though people are protected under the First Amendment speech, and technically and lawfully nothing will come out of this, especially right now, especially this incident in Miami, it still puts limitations on others' First Amendment speech, because other people, I believe, will now be intimidated, and it will censor some First Amendment speech, especially on social media. There are some people who have identifiable information, just like the Finest Unfiltered. You know, some people have fake names, this and that, and faces. But for those people that have their actual name to face, they may be intimidated and may be censored already to actually express themselves on social media, and they may hold back. So to me, the goal has been met already, and the accomplishment of censoring First Amendment speech is already there, right? Most people are not going to have the fortitude to say, I'm not going to fear. This is my God-given right. This is our First Amendment right. This is under the U.S. Constitution. But I believe the goal of censorship has already been met. And this is the thing, exactly what we said here. It's on both sides. The left and the right, I believe, somehow found a way to compromise in the middle. And the middle ground is by censoring speech. And the agenda has been met, because even though they're protected, I still believe there's definitely people that are intimidated, definitely censoring themselves as they move along right now. Before they make a post, if it's on X or Instagram, besides the fact that you already have Instagram and X monitoring your stuff already, there is some serious censorship there, but now they're going to be intimidated because, hey, maybe the police will show up at my door. Maybe even if it's just a conversation and there's no intentions to make an arrest, just the fact that we have authoritative figures, our law enforcement, the most tangible form of government, right? When I say the most tangible form of government, this is actually government at your door. So it's definitely going to put limitations on people. And this is scary stuff because we have law enforcement throughout this entire country. And we've heard, we've talked to numerous different types of walks of life on X Spaces who really support the Constitution, people part of the freedom movement. And I have to say that they're right when it comes to this, that there's most law enforcement, when they take the oath, don't really understand the U.S. Constitution. And that's important to understand is that as a law enforcement officer, you have to protect civil liberties and also at the same time enforce the law. So I don't think that in my opinion, I don't think that civil liberties and protecting people and stopping crime under the law are opposites. I believe that they should coexist. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've coexisted for since the founding of this country, right? Our civil liberties, and we still had police, but we didn't have police going after nonviolent people who were just expressing themselves. The issue with social media is just like, a lot of the things that we talk about aren't really that revolutionary, right? I think everybody is really talking about them. They're just not doing it publicly. So what happened with social media and the rise of social media and the rise of podcasts is it gave everyday people the chance to express themselves. So you get to hear from on the ground people what's going on in their profession, teachers, cops, firefighters, right? And real experts in their profession, not these educated people who surround themselves around law enforcement, but never really truly experienced it. Not the academics, like the true, real experts in all of our professions. And it's something that government has never had to deal with, where it's like, well, I go out on TV and I'm basically just going to say this and everyone's going to believe me except for the cops. But who cares? Because none of them know any better anyway, and the cops have no voice, so no one's going to listen to them. But then you go out and you put this public safety policy up, and it makes no sense. And you have a couple of police officers, former police officers, who come online or go on a podcast and literally rip your policy to shreds and say how it's a bad policy, how it's going to make crime rise, how you have no idea what you're doing. And they don't know what to do about that, because keeping people dumb is the ultimate control factor, right? It's better than keeping you afraid. Keeping you dumb and uninformed is definitely the best control factor there is, because you won't even push back. You'll just take at face value whatever that talking head or their bought and paid for legacy media is pushing, shoving down your throat. Right? You're not going to know any better. You're not going to look any better. Hey, I don't know that they're saying this. They said this. I don't know. They did this. They said that. And so now we're seeing where these things are happening. And not only is it just because they're worried about you debunking the policy that they're coming up, but a lot of it has to do because a lot of our elected officials and their appointees really just people with very large egos and that have no humility and can't even take the slightest amount of criticism. They have very thin-skinned people. So sometimes it's not even like a great argument where it's really hurting them politically. It's just they don't want any criticism whatsoever. And you're going to see it clear as day here with the Miami Beach mayor. So now this lady, Raquel Pacheco, she lives in Miami Beach. She lives in the Miami Beach community. She posts to the Miami Beach community Facebook group. Right now, I don't agree with anything she says. I think that, I think she's a little misinformed. I think I don't agree with her post. Let me read it to you here. But if somebody could tell me here, like, what labels this post dangerous? Because this is a picture of the post. Okay. This is a picture of the post. This is the Miami Beach police officer showing her the picture of this post. And if you read on the top of his text messages, what it says is, dangerous, right? So dangerous Facebook post. Now, maybe misinformed Facebook post, but this to me is not police work. There is nothing to be done here. Listen to what she says. And by the way, she puts this in the Facebook post. It has 15 likes. It's not even like this thing went viral. So just think about how thin-skinned this mayor is, and think about how spineless his police force is. Because someone should have been like, "What? You want us to do what?" Yeah, no, we don't do that. No. We're the police. We go after bad guys. We don't go after women criticizing you on social media. But this is the post. The guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie that hurt his feelings and refuses to stand up for the LGBTQ community in any way. Even leaves the room when they vote on related matters. Wants you to know that you're all welcome here. Clown. I'm sorry. Like, as a law enforcement officer, as a retired law enforcement officer, I'm reading that. I do not see any way, shape, or form that this is a threat. I don't see any way, shape, or form that this is criminal, that this could potentially be dangerous, that this woman could potentially be a domestic terrorist. There is no indicators here of anything other than she doesn't like the mayor. She thinks he's a bully. She thinks he's thin-skinned. And apparently, she was right.
Yeah. He, like I said last go round, he is thin-skinned for a fact, and he's not just thin-skinned, but he doesn't believe that he believes there's a limit to free speech, and his limit is not we're not talking about free speech that threatens, because that's something completely different. We're talking about free speech. He believes that there's a limit to it, okay, and that limit comes on if you criticize if you broach certain topics. And she did touch on a specific topic in that tweet that goes back to his very platform when he ran for mayor. And that platform is basically that he doesn't believe you should criticize anything going on in the Middle East, and especially a certain country, if you know what I mean. Okay, certain country. And this is on his website, by the way. And this is his platform policy specifically, where he specifically mentions that country. What that country has to do with Miami Beach is beyond me. Because if I'm running for mayor of Miami Beach, I'm talking about Miami Beach politics. What affects the lives of people in Miami Beach, not a country that's half a continent away. But yeah, he did mention it. And even worse, he sponsored a resolution which explicitly he sought to limit speech about that certain country. Okay. And so this resolution is pending in Miami Beach City Council right now. And you can see the area highlighted where he specific to that criticism of that country.
Unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Clear.
Exactly.
Yeah. You should see the other part of this, and it goes down a whole list of what you can't do, and it's all ridiculous. It's all like just you're out of line. Okay, and what country these people think they're in is beyond me, because this is completely antithetical to the First Amendment and the spirit of the Constitution. But okay, there was also a performance. There was a theater in Miami Beach that had a performance about what's going on there in that region of the world, and he sought to close the theater because the theater receives funds from the city council. He sought to close it. Luckily, Miami Beach City Council didn't go along with it. Okay, but here's what's even crazier. The performers, right? The performers and the people who produced the show, and the majority of them were, guess what? They were Jewish. Okay. So again, when we talked on Monday and Friday about how DEI doesn't really help the people on the bottom. DEI is what the left uses to browbeat you into going along with whatever scheme they have today. Okay. Anti-Semitism is how the right browbeats you into going along with whatever they want. It's the same thing. Okay. And you can see here, what he wants doesn't benefit the Jewish people who live in that community. Okay. It doesn't. And it's all a smokescreen for elitism. And again, as John said, these elites are very thin-skinned. They're used to people all around them being yes men and yes women. And when you say no, and the fact that we on the internet have the power, the voice to all go on the internet and say no, they hate it because, again, everybody around them is saying yes. So.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, right, is there was a huge populace of Jewish that had migrated from New York to Miami. I would say in the 80s, early 90s, there was a huge population of Jewish in Miami, but that huge population had left Miami. There's a small sect of Jewish left in Miami, but very little compared to the 80s and 90s. But yet we still see the mayor in a position where really it's not even about Jewish, it's about Israel, right? And so there's a complete nexus. And some people, what are you saying? Well, when I say Israel, we're talking about the actual government. We're not just talking about Jewish people. So in Franco, shout out to you. I agree with in Franco says here. There's the answer in the post. It's dangerous because it hurts the mayor's feelings. Well, not only does it, we know he's thin-skinned, right? So the woman that made this post was spot on about that. But it's not just about his feelings. It's also about the agenda, which Marlon just laid out perfectly. There's no doubt that this is about the agenda. And it's unfortunate, scary at this point where politicians in this country, and it's not just isolated to Miami, but we see it in different cities throughout this country. We see it even in small towns in this country, left and right politics, is what we see is that politicians no longer see themselves as people that are serving the people, right? They don't see themselves as I'm an elected official serving the people. They see themselves as dictators of a sector or an area. And this is an area that they have to manage. They have to control the narrative. They have to control everyone's perception. We see it in Miami. We see it in New York, where the Eric Adams administration wanted to control that sector, right? New York City, that area, control narratives, control perception. And this is on a national level here, where we're trying to control people's perceptions, control their realities, control the way they think. It's interesting at this point that we become so far removed from the Constitution, not just in time, but an understanding of how important, how prevalent that this country, the bedrock of it was built on the Constitution. And it's said that most people, when they take an oath of office, including law enforcement, which they say is the most tangible form of government, even more than the mayor, in my opinion, don't really understand what oath they're taking and what that oath means. So at this point, I think moving forward, all politicians, all law enforcement professionals, anyone that's in government, anyone that has to take an oath, I believe, should have to take a course, maybe a 2 or 3 day course, something where they're reminded and actually educated what the U.S. Constitution is. Because I don't think people really understand it, nor do they care. They should take a seminar, take a course for maybe 3 or 4 days, and actually learn the Constitution over again in a microcosm, in a vacuum in a short time, because you don't have to do it extensively, but to remind what the Constitution is. And then the people have to have the guts to stand up and hold their elected officials accountable, hold them accountable for violating the Constitution, because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And especially right now, mainstream media no longer can be trusted. It's podcasts and networks like this and networks throughout the entire country where real people are actually have their boots on the ground and they're speaking. They're speaking because we need to listen to real people, because it's mainstream media, it's law enforcement throughout the entire country, the leadership, it's politicians that are controlling this narrative and putting the whole country in this vacuum. And I believe that free speech has already been censored. It's censored on Instagram. It's censored on Facebook. It's censored on X. And it's also censored in the street. I mean, it's even come to this point where people just are afraid to be normal. I saw it recently, and maybe it was about a month ago. There was a social media post. I don't know if you guys saw it. And there was a young girl. She must have been about 21, maybe 22, young, pretty girl. And she was saying how the world has changed, that young men don't come up to her and try to flirt with her or try to have a conversation with her, right? She doesn't have any normal interaction, that the only conversation she has with potential daters is on social media. And even then, there's limits because people are afraid to be themselves. They're afraid to express themselves. Why? Young men are afraid to express themselves in person because, for one, they just don't have the social aptitude because they grew up on social media. But the second thing is people are afraid of what they say in public. I mean, we see videos constantly going viral of men working out in the gym. We have girls scantily dressed. Not all women, but some girls go to the gym scantily dressed. They're half naked, working out. And then if a man is working out and glances over, they find themselves on social media being attacked, that they're somehow invading some woman's space or potentially sexually harassing them. So people are afraid to move. They're afraid to speak. So it's happened on all different levels in this country.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild, dude. It's wild to think that an American politician who swore an oath to the United States Constitution thinks for some reason that Americans can't criticize them, can't criticize a foreign nation, and is looking to criminalize it. And then, however you feel politically, whether you're pro-Israel or you're pro-Palestine, you have the right to express yourself in this country. That is what freedom of speech is. Like until you're threatening people, hate speech is a protected activity. And that's the thing I think that we're starting to lose in this country. We're starting to understand that, one, why hate speech is a protected activity? Because hate speech is anything that offends the person, right? Hate speech to me could be like you saying that this network spreads misinformation and we're openly biased towards black and brown people, right? Like when that could be hate speech to me. Does that mean that that's accurate? Does that mean that the person that said that is inaccurate? Maybe they're correct, right? Why should their speech be chilled? You have the right to say whatever you want in this country, and that used to be a founding principle in this nation. And so while I'm never a fan of people going out there and blasting people from behind a fake name, I understand it. I understand it. Like right now in the United Kingdom, what they're trying to do is they're trying to push another app instead of X. And on that app, what you have to do is be identified, right? And why do they want you identified? Because they want you identified because they want you afraid not only of law enforcement knocking on your door, but of your career being harmed, your social credit score being brought down, basically, because we basically have that already in this country. There is a social credit score. And so they're pushing that. And I hear that those same calls here. And I think, and to be fair, I think even myself, I had pushed that a little bit. I had been like, well, maybe people's voices that aren't identified should be downgraded a little bit. Not that, and to think back, I mean, what's happening is every government around this world is attempting to control and chill speech. So the UK doing that, that's something that's actually being pushed here in the United States. And think about how crazy that is, right? Because the Federalist Papers, right? The founding fathers of our country, they used fake names. They used fake names. You know why they used fake names? Were they saying anything that was a lie? No. But if anyone found out who was writing those papers, what would have happened to them? They would have been hung, right? So they used fake names. And until today, I mean, there are many podcasts that you listen to. There are many books that you read. There are many names that that are not that person's name, and I could go through them, and I'm not going to because people have told me things confidentially. But if they use synonyms, they use fake names, they use aliases, and there's nothing wrong with that. You might know their face, but you think you know their name, but you actually don't, And to think about it, there is nothing wrong with you being anonymous. There's nothing wrong with you being identified, but we shouldn't have to feel the need to be anonymous in this country. And the only reason that people are doing that is because they're worried about the financial harm to them. They're worried about law enforcement coming after them. They're worried about how they will be viewed in society. You know, like doing this, like coming out with your face on social media and your actual name and speaking and giving your opinions, you know, people love it. They're like, "Oh, I love it. I love it." I can't do that though. And I'm like, you don't see something wrong with that? You don't see how this country's starting to slide? And you know, just to go back to the Ronald Reagan quote, you know, what Ronald Reagan had said, and I think it's accurate, you know. It's completely accurate. He said, "Freedom's never more than one generation away. It's not handed through our bloodline. It's not given through the United States Constitution. It has to be fought for." And what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing a nation of cowards gladly, willingly giving away their free speech. And you know, I don't really know where I stand on any foreign conflicts overseas, but I could tell you right now, I don't care if you support Palestine. I don't care if you support Israel. We should be able to have the conversation in this country. And anyone that's saying that we can't and we need to criminalize speech against one or the other, they're not the good guys. That's what I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. John is right about like all these nations, moving to try and get rid of free speech on the internet, and in particular, it's nations of the West that are doing it because um, a lot of nations, and especially in the East, have a different culture, and their culture, they don't have that kind of liberalized culture that the West has, and the West has had freedom of speech for you know at this point. I would say real freedom of speech for I would say at least maybe 200 years. Now we've had incidents in between there where it's like it's been parts of free speech have been tried to taken away by government measures. But the point I'm trying to make here is that that ability to voice your complaints in an open forum is kind of part of Western culture at this point. But the um the people that the elitists of the world of the West right now want to get rid of it. And uh, as an example here, right? So you guys know the World Economic Forum is going on right now in Davos, Switzerland, right? And World Economic Forum is where all these globalists meet up every year. And it's like they meet up and talk amongst each other and plan for the next year, And a lot of it ties back into economics. And right now they're meeting. And one of the things brought up there is by Larry Fink. And if you think this has nothing to do with policing, you're crazy. Because remember, Larry Fink was honorary chair of the Police Foundation, and we all know how important. We all know the influence the Police Foundation has on the NYPD. But here is Larry Fink, and he's talking about putting everything on a unified blockchain, everything, including your ID, the internet, your banking, every government record on the same blockchain, which is one of the methods they want to use to squash speech. Because if your ID on the internet is connected to your banking records, then we can freeze your bank account if you say something they don't like. So as John said, they are absolutely taking steps now to get rid of your ability to voice complaints and ability to criticize them. And people need to realize that the true enemy is not us, each other. Okay, we have more in common than people realize. The true enemy are the people who are taking advantage of the system at the top, and all the other issues. are smoke screens to manipulate your empathy in one way or the other. And so, guys, you in the chat, I hope you don't get lost in this. Okay, that you don't miss the forest for the trees. In that, the mayor that we're talking about here, his policy, he's trying to quell free speech under anti-Semitism. Okay, but as we said before, and it's hurting Jews. You can't think of this. It's not. You don't think of this as coming from Jews. It's coming from elitists who are hiding behind the ruse of anti-Semitism. Okay, they're weaponizing it again, just like the elites in the Black community weaponize racism to continue their cronyism, while the people on the bottom suffer for it. So don't get distracted by their methods to create more infighting. Is what I'm saying.
I just put the real Janet Yellen in time out. You got to slow down with your comments. Like you can't spam the chat. If you spam the chat, we'll keep you off the chat. You could say whatever you like, but do it civilly and do it respectfully. If you think you're gonna take over the chat, you're not welcome here. So just so you know.
Yeah, spot on. Even some of the stuff coming out is some pretty nasty rhetoric. But again, this is a free speech platform, and I'm Jewish myself. It's pretty offensive, but hey, it's a free speech platform. So with that being said, John, I'm glad that you brought up Ronald Reagan. And I think Ronald Reagan was way ahead of his time. And he really foreshadowed what can happen. And here we are. And what did Ronald Reagan say? Ronald Reagan said that we are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. We're not a government that has a nation. So think about it. That's important, right? Because what Ronald Reagan also said is that the government should fear the people. The people should not fear the government. That's what this country was built on. That's supposed to be the foundation. The foundation, the premise of the Constitution is giving the power to the people, not giving power to government. Government is supposed to serve the people. But I believe the tides have turned, and people really do suffer from a lack of information and a lack of education about what the Constitution is. And that's why I do believe, and I'm going to say that again, I do believe that every politician and every law enforcement officer should have to go through some type of Constitution course and really understand that they're serving the people and the people are not serving them. And that's some type of dictatorship. I think it's really important that we get to that point, because we are really moving away from what the fundamentalism is of the Constitution. And again, I think that Ronald Reagan was way ahead of his time. I mean, we think about 1984. What did Ronald Reagan also say in 1984? He said, if you remember, free speech is our last stand on earth. And then if we lose free speech, we lose the earth. I mean, think about how powerful that is, because this should be scary right now. Everyone needs to wake up at this point and ask themselves, wow, how did we get to this point that we have a mayor so thin-skinned and also has an agenda? The reality is he's thin-skinned, but I believe that's what more of the premise of sending 2 police officers to someone's home in regards to a social media post is more about an agenda. That's why I agree with Marlon. While I'm Jewish, but this is not about being Jewish. This is about the government of Israel. And it is what Marlon said. We have elitists that are hiding behind Jewish. I'm sure most of these people that are elitists probably never even stepped into a temple in their entire lives. So, amazing, Ann. Thank you so much. I appreciate you put that. This is a quote that I always use. Readers are leaders. Absolutely. In order to be a leader, you have to be a reader. And it's the same thing that for our law enforcement and our politicians throughout this country. They need to read the Constitution again. They need to hand a pamphlet to every law enforcement officer and every politician and say, you are being held accountable for the oath that you just taken. You need to take this class and you need to read this and make sure you understand. And I think back, and I think I had a good understanding of the Constitution, but it's only gotten better since we've had our First Amendment speech attacked, especially myself and John with this network, and actually just reading again and reading into the history of our forefathers. And I can say this. I used to think that it was much stronger in this country, being a former Marine, when it came to free speech. And I thought it was pretty much impervious, that it was just so hard in this country. But the reality is, I think free speech is like an egg, right? If you hold an egg on the sides, it's pretty strong, but you could just take it right in the middle and crush it. And I believe that's what free speech is. I believe it's hard on the ends, right? And right now it's pretty solid. But if we're not paying attention to it, people could just grasp it and crush it. And it's in the hands of these politicians right now. So let's remind people that the government belongs to the people. The people do not belong to the government.
Yeah, it's scary, dude. You know, and just think. Like I think it was last week we just did an episode where we were talking about how law enforcement doesn't understand First Amendment rights, particularly the NYPD, because we were watching the NYPD get absolutely abused, and we were saying like they clearly don't understand when free speech turns illegal. Right? They think that they could just be threatened and have their space invaded and really be obstructed from doing their duties. And we had called it out, like the NYPD should absolutely do a training to show people when free speech becomes illegal. But it should also be when free speech is legal too, and what we do and don't police. And that's not happening. And honestly, I don't think this is. I think that like the thing that's not in America, and what I noticed like throughout this country, is there isn't a standard of policing throughout the whole country. Minneapolis, they do this. New York, they do this. Chicago, they do this. Florida, they do this. And, you know, not that I'm looking for a federalized police force, but there should be some type of training, especially around constitutional policing. I think like that's the biggest thing we're seeing here. So since we did that episode, you know, the NYPD has now made a mandatory First Amendment activity training, right? So uniformed members under of the service below the rank of captain are reminded they must attend the one-day mandatory First Amendment activities training. So you know, and why that's exclusive to people under the rank of captain, because I think ultimately the way that the job will move and the way that training happens, that should start at the top. So captains should also get this training and be reminded of the oath they swore and be made to understand the legality of all of this. But I don't just hold this into the NYPD. Clearly, we see it in Miami Beach. We see it here. I see it here in St. Augustine, Florida. And I'll bring that up. I'll bring that up what I'm talking about in a minute. Cops we've moved away from the understanding of what free speech is. We've moved away from who's a criminal and who's just an American, who's just a rugged individual, for lack of better words, right? And what we're doing is we're criminalizing those rugged individuals. We're criminalizing those Americans who have the audacity to give their honest opinions publicly and utilize their God-given right that is constitutionally protected in this country to free speech. That's what we're doing, and we're doing it at the behest of people that do not care about the laws and the founding of this nation, and people that have sworn oath before God to protect that Constitution. They are literally throwing that oath in the garbage. They're violating their oath, and they're taking a knee to their political masters. Because every police department in this country, every police chief, every police commissioner, whether you're elected, whether you're appointed, you should be beholden to the oath you swore. And when you're not, you should be removed. And, you know, it is a very scary topic that we're having today, because you see it clear as day. You're not free in this country, and you know you're not free. And that's why most of you are speaking from behind fake names, because you're afraid, like our founding fathers were. You're afraid of what your honest opinion that you believe in your heart, that's not a harm to anyone. You're afraid to vocalize it. And you know what? And you see clear as day why. It will hurt your ability to work. It'll hurt your ability to feed your family. It'll hurt your ability for future employment. It'll put you in a bad standing with this nation. Like we told you, here we were giving our opinions about what was happening in the corruption of the Eric Adams administration, in the incompetence of his appointees, going through the history of his appointees. We just did that. And what were we labeled as? And we're probably still labeled as today. Domestic terrorist. You know, it's funny. Like I never spoke about this, but I applied for Homeland Security. I have never gotten a call. I've never gotten a call. And I'm like, and I applied not because I necessarily wanted the job, but I applied because I'm like, here I am. I'm physically fit. They said there's no age limit. I'm more than qualified to take the job. I have a excellent record, policing record, and I've never received a call. And I'm like, wow, you say you're hurting for people, but you don't want anyone. And I guarantee if I went and applied now at this moment in time to any police department in this country, I guarantee I would not be accepted because I utilize my God-given First Amendment right. Not because I've done anything wrong, not because I'm a danger to anybody. I mean, I think everybody loves living next to me, regardless if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You know who I am. You know what I think. We could have civil debate. We could laugh about the shit that we don't agree on. It's fine. You know, and for some reason, when you talk in this country, you are labeled as a threat. You're labeled as a domestic terrorist. And we had weak, thin-skinned, egotistical people who had no business leading law enforcement give our names and have us labeled as domestic terrorists in this country. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. Honestly, it's disgusting to me. And like even just talking about this really saddens me. And it worries me for the next generation. It worries me what we're leaving to our children and to their children's children. Like we are not doing our duty. We are absolutely shirking our responsibility for money. All of us, every single one of us, because the things that we're saying here and the things that people are saying online that are being attacked and they're having their homes, they're having police show up at their doors for, this should be everyday common occurrence. It should happen every day, all the time. We are headed into a very, very scary place. And like Reagan said, if we lose freedom here, that's it. We're the last beacon of hope. And we're allowing it to happen because we're afraid.
Yeah. I don't know where things are going to end, but you're absolutely right. We are headed to some very interesting times, you know, and I'm gonna say people should really think about this because you know the people who are growing into the lead roles at institutions right now are younger millennials and Gen Z. Now, I believe Gen Z is now in their early 30s, you know, and as we talked about many times, hey, Gen Zers, a lot of them have grown up with helicopter parenting, and you know, I don't personally, I don't see them having those cultural moments of rebellion that other generations did. Because like if you grew up in the 90s, because we still had a counterculture in the 90s, you know, we had counterculture in the 80s, and you know, I'm not going to go all the way back to the 60s, but you get the point here. And I don't really see Generation Z have really ever had that. You know, their counterculture is, if you consider marching for some leftist cause counterculture, you know, when the establishment wants that, I don't think that's the same thing, you know? So I worry when these people get into the executive positions of these institutions, like how, you know, when they're the cops being told to go knock on your door because you said something the mayor doesn't like on social media, what are they going to do? Because I can tell you for a fact that this goes on in NYPD as well. Now, NYPD, you're more likely to go knocking on someone who's conservative's door than leftist. But this happens, and this is what Intel does, and this is what Leads does. Okay, when Leads, it's very easy to get a lead. a Leeds case involving something you've said online. Okay, it's a matter of either one of the data scrapers picking it up and sending it to the feds, and from the feds it trickles down to us via what's called the eGuardian system. Okay, so you're essentially getting a case number from the FBI with your name attached to it because you said something that someone on the internet thought was offensive and thought because it was so offensive it might be threatening, right? And now you have a case number that trickles its way down to NYPD, to Intel, largely because a lot of times the feds don't want to take it. Okay, so now you have a case on your desk in Leeds, and what are you going to do with it? At some point, you're going to have to talk to this guy. Now, luckily, when I was there in Leeds, we had some great supervisors who knew when this stuff was BS and that the speech is constitutionally protected. So a lot of times they would shut it down, and a lot of times you wouldn't have to go knocking on his door. But if we're heading to a point in history where the people who are the bosses there are Gen Zers, right? Will they have the common sense to be able to tell the Intel operations desk or whichever boss at headquarters that this is BS? I don't know, but it's something you need to think about, and people need to realize just how easy it is to have a case against you and to be labeled a terrorist or the ambiguous terroristic threats just because you said something that somebody doesn't like on the internet. It's a real thing, people. And I'm gonna guess that the cops who approached that went to that lady's house in Miami are probably their version of Intel, or could even be cops attached to their local Joint Terrorist Task Force. But those cops themselves aren't smart enough to go around it, because I can tell you for a fact, and I did it, I'm not gonna go knocking on your door for free speech. I'm gonna find a way to avoid that, okay? Because I know I'm gonna end up on some viral video. In most cases, I would call people and tell them how stupid it was, tell them, hey, listen, some idiot somewhere got offended by what you said on the internet, okay? And I'm obligated to talk to you just because of the case, but this isn't going anywhere. I would tell people that myself. The fact that these cops didn't tell this lady that, I bet you if they had approached her like that, they probably wouldn't have even been on camera, because she would have been like, yeah, this is nonsense. And they would have basically be telling her, we have to do this just because the bosses want us to do it, but we're not taking this anyway. But I have a feeling they approached it differently, and then she realized at a certain point, I got to take my camera and record this. But again, we have to worry about the people that are coming in charge of these agencies in the future, and whether they'll respect people's rights and be smart enough to go around the BS.
Yeah, and just one more time, Johnny Yellen, if you spam the chat again, we're kicking you out. You could say what you want here, do it civilly, and do it in a normal pace. If you're gonna just keep typing and just taking over the entire chat, you're out. Then that's not freedom of speech. That's actually harassment. That's taking people's over. There's a line there, right? There's a line there. We'll respect you. You could say what the hell you'd like. Do it respectfully with us. If you're gonna take over and spam the chat, you're out of here. So last warning. Thank you.
Outstanding. So there's a couple of flashpoints I'd like to discuss here. First one is this, and I think that some people don't even really understand, especially law enforcement. And that's why I think education is really important, is that the Constitution is the highest law of the land. The Constitution is the hierarchy of any law in this country. The Constitution outweighs any rulings, any executive orders, law enforcement themselves, and even rulings and court orders by judges. The Constitution is the highest law of the land. And if any of those proceedings, and this is just examples, violate the Constitution, they become invalid. The second is this. We just talked about social media. I think there's a correlation between social media and also recruitment within law enforcement throughout this country, right? So when you're applying or you're in the recruitment process for a law enforcement agency throughout this entire country, if you have social media, which I would say most people do, I would say it's hard to believe that anyone at this point doesn't have social media because it's probably the most tangible form of communication right now. That your social media, if you're applying or you're in the recruit process, is going to be scrubbed. And what are the purposes for scrubbing? We could say to make sure that you're not part of some type of gang or that you're not part of some type of supremacy. But ultimately, what is it really about? Is it because if they were to scrub my social media or John's social media or Marlon's, quickly they would see that we're not part of any type of domestic terrorism. We're no threat to this country. But I can guarantee, just based on our social media post, if they took a few of our posts and sent it to a recruitment head in law enforcement, we would not get the job just because we are giving our opinions and we're critical. And that, to me, right there is another indication how it violates your First Amendment speech. Think about it. You're not employed at the time. When you're employed for a law enforcement agency or a private company, your speech in some ways is censored, right? Because you have to, you're working for that organization. Now that's something different, but your speech is actually being curtailed based on what you did before you got into that organization. So to me, that violates the Constitution also. So, I mean, these are some major flashpoints here. The next one I think we should talk about also, I believe artificial intelligence is already there censoring speech and actually controlling and directing narratives, right? Just try it. Go on artificial intelligence and type an opinion that you have based on some type of history. And I guarantee you artificial intelligence will correct you because it's so subjective. So it's actually correcting your speech and it will direct you into the narrative that it wants you to have. And that's in artificial intelligence. It's super, super subjective.
Yeah, we shouldn't even really call it artificial intelligence. We should call it artificial truth and artificial narrative, because that's basically what it is. Like, somebody programmed it, and the biases and the thoughts of that program will create its thoughts, right? And I'm still not sold on artificial intelligence as anything other than a tool, because it's just so highly inaccurate that it's like it's a tool, in my opinion. And it's not one that you should actually trust. You should dig down and do your own research. I do use AI a lot when I'm researching stuff, but then I take what AI gives me and then I dissect that further, and then I go into my own research on it, because I don't trust it at all. I don't take it at face value at all. And the reason I don't do that is because when you go and drill down further, you'll see it's highly inaccurate. Highly inaccurate, and it's highly biased too. I've literally had arguments with AI, like asked it to do things, and it's like, oh, I can't do that because you're doing this, you're inciting whatever it is, you're making fun of someone, this is whatever, it violates our policies. And I'm like, how does it violate your policies? Honesty. I think one time it was the one time I saw like the narrative so much was it was after the Democratic primary. After the Democratic primary, I tried to make like an AI photo of Zohran Mamdani holding a gold medal, Andrew Cuomo with a silver, and then Eric Adams in the audience just looking at both of them sad. And it said it violated their policy. And I'm like, why would it violate your policy? And it went further to say like, it wasn't nice or something like that. Like something along the lines of it would hurt someone's feelings. And I'm like, people win Olympic events all the time. They get a gold medal. People get silver medals. And there are people in the stands. What is wrong with what I'm putting here? And it would not spit the image out. It absolutely refused to.
John, everybody's supposed to get a trophy. Don't you know that?
It was sick. That was kind of what it was. Like, I was like, should I make them all with gold medals? Is that okay? Like, and I'm like, here I am. I'm arguing with this stupid thing. Like, so I don't like the intelligence part.
I can see that. Shut up.
It was probably, we were arguing. I was arguing with ChatGPT for like a half hour. I was like,
Who won the argument?
This is ridiculous. They did, because I guess I did, because I was just like, screw you. And I made something similar anyway, somewhere else, But dude, it's like the whole thing, this whole Leeds thing, and even what you had to do, Marlon, it really bothers me because it really has no business in law enforcement. It's really, we've really lost our way. So like this is Miami Beach police. He's basically doing what you had to do. So we showed you the post of the woman. She was criticizing the fact that he shut down that event that was like pro-Palestine and went against was looked at as inflammatory towards Israel. And this is what happens to her. She gets a knock at her door, and there are two officers. There's one on the far right that you don't see in the video. You'll see him when they leave. But here it goes. You ready? This is the interaction.
Picture to make sure it's you. We're not sure.
Okay.
Is that your account?
I refuse to answer questions without my lawyer present. So I really don't know how to answer that question
Okay.
either
Well,
way.
you're, like I said, you're not
This
going
is
to
freedom
jail.
of speech. This is America, right?
And
A
I-
veteran.
And I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
So
All
we're
right.
just trying to see if it's you, because if we're not talking to the right person, we want to go see who the right person
Okay,
is.
how can I help you?
So pretty much it's just a statement that was made as far as,
Verbatim, it says the guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie that hurt his feelings and refuses to stand up for the LGBTQ community in any way. Even leaves the room when they vote and on related matters. Wants you to know that you're all welcome. Clown face, clown face, clown face. 3 days ago.
So you don't know if it was you?
I'm not going to answer whether that's me or not.
Okay.
The concerning part, and not concerning for the person who's posting it, what we're just trying to prevent is somebody else getting agitated or agreeing with the statement. We're not saying it's true or not.
Understood.
That guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians, that can probably incite somebody to do something radical.
Listen to what he says here. Just listen to what he says here, what they're trying to do. Listen to what he says.
Agitated or
Answer whether that's me or not.
Okay.
the concerning part, and not concerning for the person who's posting it, what we're just trying to prevent is somebody else getting agitated or agreeing with the statement. We're not saying it's true or not.
We're trying to prevent someone from getting butthurt, not agreeing with your statement or agreeing with your statement. So basically, we're trying to shut down your free speech, is what he said. That's what he said. But I mean, like, dude, seriously? Like, I think that you're just dumb and you don't want to be there and you're just going along with the mayor. But like what he just said was they don't want anyone to disagree with it. And they want to make sure no one agrees with it either. Why? It's an opinion. It's her opinion. Whether someone's always going to agree or disagree. Like, this is sick, dude. This is truly sick. You're not under arrest. We just want to make sure that you posted this. And you heard what she said, right? I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran, right? She's fought for this country. And now she can't have an opinion in this country. She can't criticize her mayor. Come on.
First of all, they got the two. This is like, reminds me of the NYPD. They found the two dumbest cops who probably want to be on a fixed post. And they're like, listen, just go talk to this lady about this post. And this guy doesn't even know what he's reading. He said, this part is concerning. Dude, put a ball gag in your mouth. Absolutely ridiculous. Those two cops are idiots. I guarantee they probably spend most of the time doing fixed post.
Yeah, I guarantee you those two cops don't want to lose their sweet gig, so they're gonna go along with it, you know. And again, people, I'm telling you, I wish I could take a camera back in time and show you guys some of the cases that we got in Intel. I've made this example before. The Empire State Building. I had this case where Anthony Malkin, who's the owner of the Times Empire State Building, right? He got there was some crazy guy on the internet saying things about him, you know? And I looked at it, I'm like, it's not against the law to be crazy on the internet, you know? But it was a case, nevertheless, right? So I ended up speaking to a guy named O'Donnell. I think his first name is Donald O'Donnell. I believe he used to be a lieutenant on the job, but he was head of security. I told him, hey, listen, this guy, I ran all my checks. You know, this guy doesn't have a history, as far as I can tell, a psych history, right? He doesn't leave his house. He's on the internet all day. Okay, I spoke to him. I told him, listen, be careful what you're doing. You know, there are people who interpret what you're saying as a threat. And he said, okay, I hear you. I hear you. I'm gonna be careful what I say going forward. And I called Donald and I told him, hey, listen, I spoke to the guy. Again, I spoke to the FIO of that precinct, where the Empire State Building is, and they're aware of the situation. So if they see the guy in the area, they, you know, if the sector sees the guy, you know, in the vicinity, you know, they already know the situation. That wasn't good enough for him, right? So he calls my lieutenant the next day and basically forces the lieutenant to send cops up in Westchester to go talk to this guy, to go do the same thing you're seeing on here. Okay, so that, and again, it's because Anthony Malkin is also contributes to the police foundation, by the way. So he's the big money. This is where the big money comes in. Okay, but this is a major issue. Okay, major problem. You know, and we're going into a time. To me, I always thought when you go knocking on people's door for something like this, it is intimidation, because there's no law, there's no crime. There's no crime. What are you gonna do?
It's harassment, dude. It's literally harassment.
Exactly. That was total harassment.
I'm basically telling them, shut up, otherwise, you know, we're gonna come back and come back, you know. And it's completely wrong. And I can't tell you how many discussions I had back then, and most of us had too in the unit would talk about it, especially the senior detectives who actually came from the squad and were investigating real crimes, and they're doing this. And we're all thinking before we got there, hey, we're going to be investigating terrorism. All right. You know, then you get there and you realize you're chasing ghosts and investigating bullshit because somebody got their feelings hurt on the internet. And I cannot tell you how much of a problem it is.
You know what's crazy about this whole thing? It's what we realize is that in law enforcement is that, unfortunately, 10% of law enforcement does 90% of the work, and we have a lot of idiots. Those two were the biggest idiots, I guarantee it, because they actually had time to do this. I'm sure the real cops in Miami are running around doing police work while these two idiots are walking up to this lady's house with a phone, and I'm sure they read it already in the car, and they don't even realize what they read, because the guy's like, well, this part is not concerned. This is good. Those two, give them 2 ball bags and 2 ball gags to put in their mouth, because those two are the biggest idiots. I guarantee the other, I don't even have to meet those cops. The other cops in Miami right now go, oh, yep, they picked those 2 idiots. Those were the 2 dummies to actually go to that woman's house. Yeah, please tell me, under People versus DeBoer, what type of intrusive police work did they conduct? At what level of engagement were you at to respond to woman's house? So, John, you're absolutely right. That is harassment. That is police intimidation tactics. I mean, that's almost like now the police are the terrorists. With terrorists, and you know what? Thank God that she had more balls than them. She should have put the ball gag in their mouth. She had more balls than them to say, I'm not saying anything. I'm going to speak to my lawyer. I'm a veteran. Good for her. But think about it. How many people would crumble to something like that and start giving away all their information or who they spoke to, right? It could be pretty scary for someone that doesn't have police interaction, or that has the balls that woman had. She wasn't backing down. That was absolutely ridiculous. The only thing that would have been better is if they came to the door while they were talking, if she would have just slammed the door and said, take your ball gag and have a nice day. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't have to meet them. I can tell you right now, those 2 have been sitting doing some bullshit detail. Those 2 are useless. Absolutely insane. Clearly, if you had to ask them, what is the Constitution? What are the Bill of Rights? Tell me about the First Amendment. Tell me about the Second Amendment. Those 2 couldn't tell you. Absolutely. Rob Lukash, my brother right here, says 100%. Knowledge is power. Absolutely. And they tried to remove that woman's power by thinking that she's not going to know her rights. But she stood on fortitude. That's absolutely sad. And if people are just laughing and don't realize what level this could get to throughout the entire country and where we could go, I mean, what's next? What if they were told, you know what? Yeah, because this lady's saying stuff, you got to go to the house and tase her and then put her in handcuffs. You think they couldn't find 2 idiots like that? Like, well, I got to keep my Saturdays and Sundays off. So yeah, I got to do it. I got to go there and tase this lady because she's saying something bad about the mayor. I didn't really vote for him, you know. Well, he did get us a contract. Yeah, he got us a raise, so I like him. Oh, he gets us a lot of overtime too, you know. Yeah, great job. And this is not just the NYPD. This is law enforcement where we have weak leadership and idiots that are just falling in line.
Yeah, it's just if that ever happens to anybody, honestly, just be like, nah, I do exactly what she said. No, I'm gonna get my lawyer. I got nothing to say here. We done? Am I under arrest? No. Okay, thank you. Have a nice night. That's it. You know, that's it. There's really nothing to be said there. It's absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, at that point, that's when you should be getting a lawyer, and that's when you should be doing a lot of FOIA requests to see exactly how this case went and potentially sue for a civil rights violation, because that's exactly what that is. And so that's one end of the spectrum, right? When you're talking about social media posting, right? The post clearly wasn't threatening. It made no threat. It did nothing. So, but here's the other end of the spectrum where law enforcement really does not understand First Amendment. We show you how they didn't understand it a couple last week, I believe, when we showed you how cops just get abused by these people who really obstruct them from doing their job and, you know, really violate the law, harass them, get in their face, and how, you know, taking First Amendment could violate the law when you're sticking a cell phone in someone's face and you're stopping them from performing their job. Now we're showing you how cops don't understand the law when they're investigating your God-given right and your opinion. They're essentially investigating and attempting to criminalize your opinion. Not a threat, not anything else. And here it is. I'm going to show you a First Amendment activity. So there's a reporter. Her name is Caitlin Bennett. She's pretty popular. She has a YouTube channel called The Liberty Hangout. They have over 1 million followers there. So she's where I am now in St. Augustine, right? She goes down to St. Augustine. There was an anti-ICE protest there, and she was there. And what happens is she's going around with her cameraman, and she's speaking to the anti-ICE protesters, right? Civilly. She's not in anyone's face. She's not like Alex Stein causing a problem. She was literally just having a conversation with them. But there was one organizer there. Her name was Comrade Cat. She's a social media handle. And Comrade Cat was upset that she was there, and she was telling the people that were talking to her to not talk to her. And she was basically just conducting an interview. And so Comrade Cat now goes over to the Parks Police, and Comrade Cat, I suggest watching this whole thing. It's about a 20-minute video, but Comrade Cat goes over to the Parks Police and basically supervises them and been like, hey, this reporter can't be here and can't ask us questions. And the Parks Police doesn't understand the law, doesn't know the law, and basically goes over and summonses Caitlin Bennett and says that she cannot ask questions. She cannot be there, which is highly inaccurate. And he ultimately winds up summoning her. He summonses her for failure to obey a lawful order. His order was she wasn't allowed to ask questions or be on a public street, which was adjacent to federal parkland, which is highly inaccurate. Highly inaccurate. So watch. Here's just 2 minutes of the interaction, but it's clear as day. And I don't know if you're going to see the part when he's hooked, but he doesn't even know what he's doing, and they're doing this at the beck and call of literal paid protesters. Like it's insane to me. And this is what we saw happen over and over again for 3 years in the Eric Adams administration. We watched Antifa, paid agitators, and anarchists control the NYPD leadership, and good people really become targeted because they were easier to deal with. It was easier to tell someone who will actually comply and someone who actually doesn't go to jail to get away from the people that will burn down the city and will punch the police officer in his face and spit in his face. It's easier to deal with those individuals than to deal with the anarchists So like there was no apolitical stance. What we saw over and over again during that time is the NYPD side with anarchists, and here you're going to see federal parks police side with anarchists and violate Caitlin Bennett's civil rights. Watch this video. It's absolutely disgusting.
You probably might go to jail.
I'm gonna go to jail.
Possibly.
She's literally asking the police to remove me from public property.
All right, you guys need to move
Why?
over here, First Amendment area.
Yeah, this is a First Amendment area.
You don't have a permit here. They do.
Yeah, so what does the
So
permit
it's
do?
time to leave.
I want my rights to be respected. I'm
You are.
allowed to be on public
Right
property.
here is our First Amendment area, number 5,
Yeah.
for small groups and counter protesters.
Yeah.
You're a small group,
No, I'm not.
and you're a counter protester.
I'm media.
Are you here with this group?
I'm here with media.
You need to move.
They're thanking them for writing me a
Let's go.
ticket.
You're
for...
being detained for a ticket. Over here. You're on federal land. I'm a federal officer.
Yes, great.
So you're getting a
So
federal
you-
ticket.
Okay, great. I can't wait to fight this. The liberals here in St. Augustine, Florida, are cheering because this guy is trying to kick me off of public property.
No. You get to stand here
No,
on federal public property.
public.
Where
You
we
notice you
tell
said
to
public?
be.
You don't
Okay.
get to tell me which
I
public
do.
property
I'm
I
with
can
the
be
National
at.
Park Service.
Yeah. Tell me
We
how this is
designate
private
First
property.
Amendment area. I'm sorry
This
that
is
you
my
don't know
First
the
Amendment.
rules and regulations. I'm sorry.
Oh man, this is gonna be good.
You have anything with your ID on?
No,
Okay, get your mic out of my face.
I'm allowed to do this. This is my first.
You're not allowed to stick your mic in my face. So step back and get it out of my face.
So here's the thing. I am on public property. He just admitted I was on public property. This is not permitted to turn this space into private property. You guys cannot do this. We have been over this in Florida with 3 different police departments. 3. I love
Content for you.
more.
Disobey-
Did you say more content
Yeah,
for me?
more
Thank
content.
you.
Disobeying a lawful order is your ticket.
What lawful order was that?
I directed you to go from there
Yeah.
to here.
Yeah. And you think that was lawful?
And you refused my lawful order.
Yeah. So that was lawful, huh?
So this is United States District Court violation
Okay.
notice. It's a $500 forfeiture,
Okay.
$30 processing fee.
Very cool.
Total collateral is $530.
What was the lawful order that you
He
This
didn't
loses
tell
the
me.
attitude police.
He didn't tell you?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a local journalist here. Actually, why don't you go ask him? You're a journalist. Go ask him.
I'll go ask him.
Go ask him. So you asked what lawful order I disobeyed.
And he couldn't tell me, he said.
That's actually my friend, the journalist. He works for my friend at the St. John Citizen.
That's hilarious.
Former New York Post reporter. But yeah, that is wild, dude. That is like so. And if you go back, go to Liberty Hangout, watch that entire video on YouTube. That is absolutely insane because if you watch her, she's not antagonizing anyone and she's literally having civil discussions with people. And he's like, "Oh, you can't be here. You can't do this. Counter protesters are over there." She's like, "I'm media. I'm not counter protesting anything. What are you talking about?" Like she wasn't there agitating the crowd. And again, it just proves that law enforcement really does not know what is First Amendment and what's illegal.
Yeah, you know what it is? This is the equivalent of when you're in patrol, when you're a rookie at the academy and they tell you we need 2 C's every day from you, and the cops go after like grandma who's riding her bike on the sidewalk or dad who's riding his bike on the sidewalk with his kids behind him. This is exactly what it's a low-hanging fruit, and like John said, it's been going on for a while. If you look in New York, remember when there was protests against the shelters, the migrant shelters in Staten Island, and look at the response of NYPD to that, as opposed to the response to all the protests that were going on in Manhattan, all the protesters that were storming streets and blocking streets, and basically the NYPD was letting them just walk, just continue walking. But yet when grandma protested in front of the shelter, the migrant shelter, we brought out everybody, the drones, the whole army was brought out.
No, yeah, then Tough Guy Joe came out too, and he was locking everybody up. No tolerance.
Yeah. It's low-hanging fruit. They go after people who they know are going to go along with it, or who are going to be law-abiding, even though they're even in protesting, and they let the people who are going to cause them trouble let them run rampant, you know. And yeah, it's again, it's a bad look, you know. There's a question there that John just put up from that Stephen DS. You bring up a great point. That's a very good point. You know, they could have been sent by a shaky boss. But with that said, there are ways you can talk to people and de-escalate the situation, you know? And from what I'm seeing there, it just doesn't seem like they did, because you already know who she is, okay? You already know who she is. They run multiple checks on her. They know how much she makes, how much her house is worth, who's living in the house. You know, they know all this because that's what we did in Leeds too. When I did a check on you, I did your social media, I did everything. I know basically everything about you, you know. And then I go, now if I have to talk to you, I know whether you're really a threat already. Okay. So you know, I just think they weren't. I personally don't think they were smart in the way they spoke to this lady there.
Well, let's make something clear, right? The press or any form of media does not have more rights than the public, but at the same time, they don't have fewer rights either. They have their rights under the Constitution, and the only lawful order for a law enforcement officer to give media, and that's something I have to say, that the NYPD, I don't know what they do now. Well, we know what they do now. We see how they move now. But when we started the job, you know, in the early 2000s, we were always taught how to deal with the press, right? And we were taught the only lawful orders that you give the press is to disperse or give a lawful order if they're impeding on police activity, if they're impeding on a crime scene. That's the only time that we would give direction to media. Other than that, what did the NYPD teach us? They told us not to interact with the media. They would always tell you, John Mullen, if you remember, especially the way I remember is, they used to say, just pretend they're invisible and pretend they're not there. Let them do their thing. Don't even interact with the media. The only time you should interact with the media is if they're putting themselves in a position and they're impotent on a crime scene or some form of police activity, if they're obstructing police work. Other than that, they have the same rights under the Constitution as the public does. Not fewer, not more. The same rights under the Constitution. So, yeah, BSKI 824 says DCPI, right? They would always tell you when the media would try to engage you into a conversation, DCPI, right? Because you were busy, you were doing police work at that location. You didn't even have that conversation. And it said we have more and more the emasculation of law enforcement in this country is prevalent, particularly when we see this fat old part federal police officer who you could see him getting so hyped up and so angry over this 100-pound media female who's absolutely no threat, you know, because he's a weak man. He's completely emasculated, and he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. So the reason why people get agitated, one, is either incompetence, right, or laziness. I would always say the reason why people get agitated is exactly that. Laziness. I don't necessarily think he's lazy. He's there, he's moving around. Or incompetence. Because he's incompetent, he doesn't know his job. That's why he's getting angry. He looked like a buffoon. He looks like a fool. But unfortunately, that's a good majority of law enforcement. Now, he's an older guy, so we have to assume that he's been on this job for a while. But here we go, just a complete idiot. To me, at this point, it was like he was the attitude police, and he was enforcing her attitude. That's not what the police does, especially in the NYPD. You have to have a thick skin because people tell you to suck their so-and-so 100 times a day. If that guy was in the South Bronx, he wouldn't survive 5 minutes. That was absolutely ridiculous. But as John and Marlon said before, and I agree 100%, we see it often. If you remember back, there was a huge riot in Union Square, and the cops in the NYPD were getting struck. Jeffrey Madry himself getting struck with some form of plywood, and they were there with kick gloves. But then in Staten Island, we have people protesting illegal military-age males at a high school, at an all-girls school, and the police come in strong and even enforce, at the time, they were enforcing jaywalking. So Exactly that. When we have people that don't make such form of opposition and they're easy targets, then the police comes down on them. But if they fight back and they're going to be a threat, we leave them alone. Absolutely ridiculous, But that fat idiot, was just enforcing attitudes. I didn't know that's what we do from now on. And then he's afraid of her mic in his face. It's not even in her face. I've had, good luck surviving in New York, buddy. I've actually been in the middle of fighting with a perp in the street, and I'm sure you guys probably had the same thing, in the middle of a brawl with a perp in the South Bronx, and people come up to me and literally put their phone in my face and asking me a question. They want to have a full conversation. Like, buddy, I'm in the middle of fighting with this guy. This guy can't even handle this 100-pound female asking questions. Loser.
Yeah, no, it just, again, he didn't know his job, and because he didn't know the job and he doesn't understand the law, he allowed himself to be supervised by a paid protester. He allowed himself, like, it really, and then you're like, and it's always, it really makes me laugh, man, because, the people that support law enforcement get abused by law enforcement. And the people that hate you kiss their ass. And I don't understand, like, if Communist Cat or whatever the hell her name is, if she came up to me and I was standing there, and I don't care what rank I was, if she came up to me and she was like, "Oh, that reporter's there," I would have been like, "Yeah, it's her First Amendment right. Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good day. What do you want me to do?" Like that. So you could leave. You could go somewhere else. Oh, we have a permit. Okay, and so does she. It's called the United States Constitution. Have a nice day, ma'am. Thank you. Like, what is she doing? Well, she's not doing anything illegal. What the hell do you want me to do? What would you like me to do? I mean, and clear as day, like Caitlin nails it. She goes, "Isn't this pretty fascist? I'm not allowed to ask questions, and you have law enforcement kicking me out and giving me a summons if I didn't even break a law." And so it just shows, like, as we go across the country, you just see it. And even today, man, like the title of this episode, Policing Opinions, is free speech being criminalized in America? I mean, it hasn't like lost me either that this episode is really being downgraded too. We usually about this time, we usually have about 800 to 1,000 people on here. Right now, we only have 375 people on here. And that just shows you how the algorithm doesn't even want us talking about free speech or opinions. I mean, because I mean, think about it, even all the insanity around ICE, the whole debate, anti-ICE, pro-ICE, whatever. I mean, it's like, I really can't help but believe that all of this is being pushed on both sides, like literally throwing us in a pot and boiling the water. Because here's the simple aspect of it. If you don't want ICE running around on your streets, here's a real opinion that needs to be watered down. It needs to be shut down. So I'll expect a knock on the door. If you really don't want ICE on your streets, this is what you would do. You would remove sanctuary city law, and you would allow the police departments to cooperate with ICE. And if you did that, ICE would be so overwhelmed with the police departments handing over detainers or notifying them about detainers that they wouldn't be out on the streets of America doing operations, plucking people off the street. And so no one's saying that. And that's just an opinion you're not allowed to have today in America. You just can't think around things. You can't, God forbid, you can't criticize DEI. If you criticize DEI, forget about it. You're a racist. If you question anything regarding the official narrative of anything that's been given to you by your politicians or by mainstream media, you're only allowed to have XYZ argument. You can't have an outside of the box argument. You could be pro-Palestine or you could be pro-Israel, but you can't think around either of them and look at the whole problem. And that's what we're seeing here, is that, like, independent thought, independent opinions in America are being criminalized, and we're watching it being done and being enforced by people who swore an oath to the United States Constitution. I mean, again, I agree with whoever said in the chat that they were probably sent there by a shaky boss. I get it. So you have to go do the interview. I get it. But you don't have to believe it. You should understand it. You should understand what you're doing. Be like, hey, look, I know that this is bullshit, but I just have to interview you. I don't think that you said anything threatening here, but I just want to hear I just need to ask you XYZ. Instead, he said, we just want to make sure that no one agrees with you or disagrees with you, and that you didn't hurt anyone's feelings with your opinion. It's like, and what happens if I did? You know, I mean, I'm going to say a lot of things today on social media, and I'm probably said a lot of things on this podcast that have offended a lot of people. Okay. What does that mean? That's what free speech is. If free speech means anything, if it means anything at all, it's the right to offend people. It is your God-given right to offend people, because there is nothing that you can say, nothing. There's absolutely nothing that you could say that is not going to be offensive to someone. So for police and law enforcement to now sit there and believe that they're going to be the morality police, or they're somehow going to stop this from occurring, that what they're really saying is they're chilling speech. So Nin, welcome to the chat. You know, I really enjoyed your comments yesterday about us besmirching your character and how we don't like people that look like you. Although that's very, you know, it's an unintelligent conversation, but welcome here. But that's what it is. You know, you have people who claim they care about civil rights. You have people that care. They claim about the United States Constitution, and they care about law and standards. And then at the same time, if you disagree with them, you know, let's not have a debate. Let's just say that you should be locked up because you're a retired cop. Let's just say that you're racist because you don't belong with my opinion. And it's one thing for people to do that, like an individual. It's one thing for individuals to do that. It's a completely different thing when now the weight of law enforcement is being brought upon you. You know, that is completely different. So again, welcome to the chat. And yes, paid protesters and then paid agitators. If you'd like, if you ever grow a pair of balls instead of just cursing from behind a microphone in a platform, you could come on here and I could literally show you video of people who go to every single protest and change the flags and have no job and yet somehow are able to support their lifestyle. How? Where's the money coming from? You know? That's it. Paid protesters, taxpayer paid protesters, actually, should I say, and funded through not-for-profits, by the way, should I say. And so, and you know what? And your boys in the Crumbs crew did absolutely nothing to stop that for 3 to 4 years, even though they said that they were gonna, you know. So, you know, we got Eric Adams, and then we got the team of Eric Adams on here. So there you go.
Yeah. And then you know, there's been plenty of other articles that have highlighted the organizations that are paying these protesters, you know, and also the public organizations that are funding these protesters. Besides the NGO money, you're getting money from the likes of the Ford Foundation and Soros Open Society Foundation. It's been well documented for years now, you know, going all the way back to when BLM first got on the scene and became a thing. So I don't know why we're pretending that some of these protesters aren't artificial, you know, and that mere fact that these protesters aren't artificial, and the policing agencies haven't come out publicly and let us know that who's behind these organizations, who's funding them. You know, even like I said a couple episodes ago, even if you can't do anything about it, right? You should come on out and come on out and try and put pressure on legislatures and government to do something about it. You know, to either pass laws or either scrutinize those organizations via other means, like say maybe the IRS. You know. I think that the fact that hasn't happened is very telling, you know, of where their head is. And again, it goes back to what we said. You know, they'd rather go after the people who like law enforcement rather than the people that hate the cops and law enforcement. And again, I think part of the reason is the diversion, you know, and they need infighting. They need that left right. The establishment needs the left fighting against the right, so you don't see what's happening behind the curtain.
Yeah, but just Marlon, just to understand, like you're besmirching the paid protesters, and you're doing it because of the color of their skin. That is why, you know, because you're discriminatory, like Eric, you know. So
That's right. Well, just you know, back to this episode. We're talking about free speech that's pretty much being curtailed and limited and censored, and even the algorithm, as John was talking about, even the algorithm is censoring this network and this platform as we speak. On an average, just on YouTube alone, normally we have anywhere from 270 to about 325 live viewers while our podcast is playing. And right now we have about 147 to 170. It's been going back and forth. And you have to ask yourselves why, right? Because we're talking about free speech. So free speech is not so free anymore. That's why even though those two cops did not put that woman in handcuffs, I believe they actually they in some way, shapes, or form, they did, figuratively speaking, they did sew her mouth and they did limit her and create some boundaries, because the next time she's going to put a post, do you think that she's going to be as expressive or make her opinions again? Do you think, even though she wasn't arrested right now, I'm sure she's intimidated, and she might be asking herself, I mean, we're talking about police intimidation tactics, right? She might be asking herself, are the police following me? Are the police looking to ticket my car? Will I be targeted? So these are definitely viable concerns. So I do believe, while they didn't handcuff her, they, figuratively speaking, I believe they did tape her mouth and sew her mouth shut. Her speech is not limited. This platform, we are limited. I mean, often we talk about it. Sometimes we see that we'll put a very interesting post and, you know, about a topic that's going on throughout the country, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just sizzles and lands right at its feet. And that's because of the algorithm that is curtailing conversation. So free speech is not so free anymore. I believe we're living in a society that we now have free limited speech. I do believe it's limited in many ways. It's not just private organizations. It's not just companies you work for, but it's throughout the entire country. And it's so prevalent. I mean, I speak to retired cops every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't speak to retired cops. The same thing for everyone that's on this network. And so many times, cops that say, "Oh, I'd love to come on your show and tell my story, but I can't." This John had spoke about this earlier in the episode. What do you mean you can't? They're scared. They're scared and they're intimidated, even in retirement, because free speech is not so free; it's limited. So, with that being said, we have to ask ourselves: are we that far removed from World War II and the Holocaust? I have ancestors that lived in camps that were killed, and so you have to say to yourself, could those two cops in Miami, could they have been Nazis? And absolutely, right? I mean, what is the difference between two cops going to someone's home to question them and intimidate them about a social media post, as we see right here, in comparison to two Nazis that went to someone's home in Germany and asked someone if they're hiding Jews in their bedroom, or if they're hiding Jews in their basement, or if they're hiding Jews in their attic? What is the difference? And what we learned by the great documentary called Ordinary Men is exactly that. They were ordinary men. This guy right here looks like an ordinary guy. He's an older guy. I mean, he's got his gold shield. He's for Christ's sakes, he's a cop. He doesn't look like a bad guy. He just looks stupid and just follows along. And that's what people did. When you watch Ordinary Men, these were ordinary men. They were not hateful people. Otherwise, they were not. And what's interesting about that also in Ordinary Men, they were not forced to do the atrocities that they were doing. They just went along to get along, to go along, to be along. And that's what these two idiots are here. I just go along with them telling me what to do. And not only, and John's right when he said earlier, not only did they didn't say, hey, listen, I have to do this thing. I just want to let you know it's stupid. I don't agree with this. Your First Amendment right. I'm making you aware that they actually sent me here. But instead, he said we. So the same thing the Nazis did. The Nazis didn't say, I'm opposed to this. You know, I think this is insane. They said, we have to see if you have Jews in your home. We have to make sure that you're not harboring Jews. Reed and Frank. And here they're doing the same thing. They're at a woman's home and saying, we. They didn't say, I don't agree with this. They said, we. They've lumped themselves together and represented the violation right here. This is scary stuff. This is scary stuff. So could these two cops be Nazis if this was World War II? Yes. And ask yourself, if you're active or retired or a police enthusiast, could you be a Nazi?
Well, I mean, that's like the ultimate realization in policing, when you realize, hey, I'm doing shit that I don't necessarily agree with, and I'm doing shit that completely violates the law, and I'm doing it anyway because it's my job. You know, great episode. First time Jordan Peterson was ever on the Joe Rogan episode. It was probably like November of 2013 or 2015. I can't remember the exact year, but I would definitely check out the first time Jordan Peterson was on Joe Rogan. I had actually, because of that episode, I had bought the book Ordinary Men, which I think is much better than the documentary. But, you know, something that he said on there, it stuck with me. And it really stuck with me, like doing police work. He's like, you don't think you would be a Nazi? You'd be a Nazi so fast, your head would spin. He goes, everyone thinks that they would be the person to fight against the Nazis and hide the Jews. And he's like, you know how rare those people are in society? And at the time, I'm sitting there and I'm going, there's no way I'd be a Nazi. It's not happening. And he's like, oh, you're not scared to die? That's all right. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to kill your wife. I'm going to kill your kids. And then I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I would be a Nazi. You know? And so, like, I mean, I know it's a stretch where we're going with all this, and I know it's like kind of jumping from one thing to the next, but it's a very slippery slope. So a lot of my guys got sent out for COVID, right? They got sent out for COVID, and at the time, I don't know if you remember, but Bill de Blasio was saying that we were going to be enforcing social distancing. And I remember telling the cops, I remember telling the person in charge of the detail, and I remember telling all the bosses. I was having a conversation with them, and I'm like, look, I don't give a shit what Bill de Blasio is saying. None of this is legal. I'm like, I'm just going to give you a scenario. Guy's walking down the block with his wife and his kids. Are you going to go up and you're going to tell them you can't walk? You have to stand 6 feet apart. They're going to go home and sleep in the same bed. You know, and all the people that did that, there weren't many incidents, and most of them just drove around and did nothing. You know what I mean? Which they should have. You know, they did their regular job. They patrolled. They put their uniform on. They patrolled. But there were a couple of incidents where people tried to enforce social distancing on group standing, and people were fired from the New York City Police Department as a result, because those situations turned violent very quickly. And, you know, you got to ask yourself, when you're being told to do something, is it accurate? And you got to remember, when you're in law enforcement, there's a huge difference between refusing a lawful order or refusing an order from your superior. Now, I don't think that this is a lawful order, by the way. Oh, you're going to go question this woman? I don't think that's a lawful order. However, it's an order from your superior and you don't want to make waves. There's a huge difference between saying, I'm not going to do that, or getting an assignment and roll call and be like, yeah, no problem. You guys are going to enforce social distancing. You guys are going to do this. You guys are going to do that. Okay. Yeah, no problem. And then you head out and you go to Starbucks or you go to your local coffee shop and you drive around, you see people and you're like, oh, yeah, no, it looks like a husband and wife to me. I'm not enforcing social distancing. And you just don't do it. And you just don't do it. Or you show up here at this woman's house and you're like, hey, you know, we got asked to investigate this, you know, this comment. Oh, okay, you have no comment? All right, have a nice day, ma'am. Thank you for your service. Take care. Boop. Refuse to answer questions. See you later. There's a huge difference between disregarding orders and refusing them. So, like, that's something that, like, we're starting to lose as society, and it really, it's again part of pulling masculinity out of policing. You know, I specifically remember standing at the Staten Island Day Parade, And I remember getting a speech at roll call about how we're going to write summonses at the Staten Island Day Parade. There is zero crime that happens at the Staten Island St. Patty's Day Parade. Zero crime. I'm not of Irish descent. You know, I don't traditionally celebrate it, but there's zero crime that happens there. And we got a speech from the chief of Staten Island, and we got a speech from all these other people how we were going to write summonses if anybody was seen with a red cup. So my sergeant comes over to me. He was my anti-crime sergeant. Great guy. I love him till today. He comes up to me and he's like, and now mind you, I volunteered for the detail. He's doing it. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it with you. Even though I don't want to work on the Sunday, I'd rather be home with my wife and kids or whatever day it was that they had. But it was a day we were off. Could have even been the Monday. So I volunteer, and he's like, yeah, look, we're going to be writing C summonses. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not writing shit. I was like, the only summonses I'm going to write is if you observe it, and I'm going to put you down as the observing officer, because I'm like, I'm not writing anything. I go to the West Indian Day Parade, and people blow pot smoke in my face and do all this other crazy shit and drink, and we're not allowed to do anything. And I'm told full stand down order. I'm not going to engage in writing a guy standing with his wife and kids in a stroller in a red cup. I'm just not going to do it. And I wasn't alone in that. It was my whole team that was there and the patrol cops that were there too. They were like, we're not doing this. This is bullshit. This is a bullshit order. And so, you know, and that was it. We pushed back. We gave our grievances. Now, if he ordered me, you're going to write this guy a summons. Yeah, no problem. Okay. Yeah, no problem. As per Sergeant XYZ, he observed this guy do that. That's it. End the story. So, and like, what happens when you rip masculinity out of policing and out of law enforcement, and you rip the spine out of cops, whether they're a man or a woman, you get people that just will do anything and will follow these ridiculous orders. And so that's something that we're missing in law enforcement. There's one thing to go along with stupidity and to not really make huge waves, but it's another thing to actually buy it hook, line, and sinker and say, well, we just don't want anyone to agree with what you're saying. Like, come on, dude, smart enough.
Yeah. Part of masculinity is standing up for this and knowing when to draw the line, you know. And again, you know, there's a very gray area when it comes to this, and I personally don't think it's legal, but you know, in Leeds we got plenty of cases like this, and it's a case, and I have to talk to you at some point, but there's a way to go about it, to go around that, and not show up on people's doorstep trying to intimidate them. And again, cops have to be wiser, and you have to know how to work within the boundaries. I'll say, when I would get these cases, I would object to it and joke about it, how this is BS, but I can't be insubordinate, you know. But there are ways I can go around it and be smart about it and not intimidate people, you know. But the other thing I'm gonna say that I hate to bring up the scamdemic again, but in terms of what John was saying about Jordan Peterson, that time already happened, and it's the scamdemic, you know. And look how many people just went along with it. You know, I see Nin on here. You know, what did you do during the scamdemic, Nin? Okay, I'm sure you're fine with the mandate and vax. Did you object to it? Do you think it's wrong? No. Okay, so if you know, when I hear people arguing these days about civil rights and cops, I should first preface the discussion with, how did you feel about the mandate back then? Because you know, I'm calling BS on what you're telling me, because if you thought fascism under a medical tyranny was okay, then I'm sorry, you have no grounds you have no moral high ground right now. Okay. You know, yeah.
It's interesting, right? Nin, you call him Nin, Nincompoop. I call him 9 Inch Nails. But it's funny, he says here, I don't need to. It's funny. Well, let's just all say it's not hard to figure out who this is, because the person behind this can't have a conversation without talking about race. It's like impossible. Somehow, like we have to inject race and everything. Because it says here, I don't need you to explain anything for me, LOL. You're a cuck on a racist podcast. Everything's about race. I don't even know what we said that talks about race today. Oh, hey, but it's free speech. You can say whatever you like. 9 Inch Nails. You can have any conversation you want. And you know what? We have very thick skin. So it's all good. But what we're talking about here is this is very important stuff. Again, I really do think that there's a huge correlation to what's going on here right now. I think those two cops don't even realize that what they did is on the same premise of what Nazis did. Someone here, I think it was Hunter, who made a comment before, said the difference between them and Nazis is Nazis actually took some violent action, but these guys actually walked away. At the same token, watch how Nazism started. Watch how it was progressive and it was slow. It didn't start out. The Nazis didn't just walk up to people and fire away. It started off just as the way it's starting right now. It started off slow. This happened over years. You know, when the United States entered World War II in 1941, this wasn't just going on since the start of the war of 1937. This was going on years before. It took years to the point that World War II actually broke out. And even then, it took us another 4 years to enter it in 1941. Why? Because we weren't directly affected by it until the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So can it happen? Yes. This is a slow burn. This happens over time, right? Restrict legislation, make limitations, more limitations, start to limit people's speech, control their perceptions, control their perspective, control the reality, control the narrative. These are all same forms that happened during World War II. Make people believe that a certain group are the root and the cause of problems, just as they do with Jews and gays and different forms of people that were the root of the problem for the government in World War II, right? And it's the same thing that's going on right now. What's the root of the problem? The root of the problem is people that are speaking out against the agenda, people that are actually trying to masculate law enforcement again, people that are trying to move away from artificial intelligence. There's a whole agenda that's going on here. So it's scary. Could we be Nazis? Absolutely. Absolutely. Very scary. You know, I mean, we could force a vaccine mandate. Who says that we can't be Nazis? I don't think this is far from the truth. It might be scary to some, and you might say it's impossible, but it's not impossible. History repeats itself. And even as a flourished society as we are, and we think we get more intelligent over time, and I don't think necessarily we're getting more intelligent over time. I think in some ways we're actually, intellectually, I think that we're actually going back in time. Most of the people right now, they live their lives on artificial intelligence, spell check. I mean, we have technology as a thinking brain for most people. So we don't have that internal critical thinking analysis anymore as much as we had before. So I think if anything, I think in some ways we're actually becoming less intelligent than we were before. And because I believe that as a society, we're so reliant on technology now, I think it's really dumbed down. I mean, think about yourselves, and including myself. If I had to ask John, Marlon, myself, if I had to ask you to give me the name of someone in your phone and give me their phone number, you probably don't know it, right? But think about years ago, before cell phones, and you were just carrying a beeper, you probably knew the phone numbers of hundreds of people, and you knew them by heart. So I think our critical analysis and intelligence has taken a step in a different direction.
Yeah, and then the other thing when we talk about speech and we talk about controlling narratives and we talk about all this stuff is, you know, a couple of days ago, and for a while, for a few days, we were getting a lot of messages about NYPD detectives showing up to a hospital in Brooklyn, and they were being like really mistreated, and they were treated poorly because the staff believed them to be ICE agents, right? And so I wasn't going to put it out because I wasn't 100% sure it happened. So I had asked a bunch of questions about it, like, oh, you know, whatever. And then finally someone that I know and I trust was like, look, this shit happened. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to bring it up. You need to put it out. So I put it out on X, and of course it went viral, right? It gets about like 600,000 views in the first night, like something like that, and a lot on Instagram as well. And you know, and then obviously it's a firestorm, right? Because now the media is calling One Police Plaza, the media is calling, DCPI. They want to know what happened. They're calling NYU. And so they kind of had to react to it at that point. So the next day, literally like almost 24 hours later, then the Detectives Endowment Association puts out like a post saying like, oh, this is wrong. And then the Daily News writes about it. And then the Post writes about it. And then Fox writes about it. And then everyone's starting to cover it. And, and it's really like so downplayed. It's so downplayed as to what happened. And again, it's just really controlling speech because the accurate information isn't being given out. What's being given out is the cops felt like they were disrespected. And it's like, no, dude, like what happened was you didn't want law enforcement in your hospital and you didn't want them there because you believed they were ICE. Now, think about the hypocrisy of it, and you heard all these people like, oh, it goes against the Hippocratic Oath. And I'm like, well, we opened up that door in 2020 when we picked and chose who we were going to treat and who we weren't and who we were going to send away. And we made people lepers. And now we've made ICE agents the new lepers. And people are so easily controlled by the narratives that are pushed in the media that we've made ICE agents like lepers, like they are carrying and walking around with COVID and they refuse to get vaccinated. And so now you're really starting to see an hysteria surrounding ICE when they show up to hospitals. And the thing is, after I put that out, you know how many cops had messaged me after that? And even ICE agents had messaged me and said that it wasn't just there. And they gave me other examples and other times of when it happened. And what bothered me more than it happened, and it bothers me more than understanding that most people are sheep and they're only able to take in the information that are given to them and process that. They can't think around it. And so they're just going to continue to like push whatever the media or their politicians are telling them. Is what bothered me more is I was like, wow, I was like the police commissioner and the unions and everyone that claims to support law enforcement really doesn't, because this shit happened on Friday. I put it out on Monday. And like, why wasn't this immediately talked about? And that's what really started to sit with me. And I'm like, oh, it wasn't immediately talked about because they don't want anyone to know what's actually happening to law enforcement in New York City. They don't want anyone to know how law enforcement are being treated. They don't want anyone to know what their policies and their rhetoric about ICE over the last decade, and that includes Eric Adams. So I found it hysterical that Fox News had posted his AI written tweet in there. I found it because I'm like, dude, this was the guy that said that ICE should never cooperate, that NYPD should never cooperate with ICE. Like, and this was the rhetoric over the last decade has led to all of this shit that's happening. And the people that claim to care about law enforcement are actually worse than the people who are just a bunch of dumb, useful idiots going along with the official narrative. Like, they're worse, in my opinion. Like, what are your thoughts about all of this insanity? Like, it's really like the whole thing is just showing what a sad state of affair we're in, how people are really controlled by a narrative. People aren't allowed to have free speech. And even our own members in law enforcement can't even get out officially what happened, because I don't need credit for the story at all whatsoever. But what I pushed out only came out as a result of that. Like, this would have never went national news. And then when it went national, the police department and the unions grabbed it to control the narrative and lessen and downplay actually what happened. And that shit bothers me more than anything.
Yeah. I have lots of thoughts on this, and criticism for both sides, It's a shame that we've gotten to this point. And again, the conditions are on there where both sides are going at each other, and they're missing the the larger picture here, Now, so you guys understand what's happening, right? When Trump came in January last year, he passed a executive order that effectively basically tossed out a lot of the exemptions of enforcement that were under the Biden administration. Okay, and one of those includes the whole sensitive areas. And I've looked to try and find exactly what that means, and it's not that easy to find online. What exactly is a sensitive area, nor if it specifically mentions hospitals. But it seems to be that because this executive order was passed, that hospitals in blue cities have interpreted it as hospitals as well, and they have put out memos to their staff that are telling them that ICE can, our policies, ICE can only come in here with a warrant. Okay. And I think that the vagueness from the federal government has only kind of fed into the hysteria on the left. Okay, and the left, by the way, I mean, I'm surprised a lot of people on the left aren't tired by now. You go from one hysteria to the next, to the next, to the next. You've been going through this since BLM. It's BLM, and then it's the scamdemic, and now it's ICE. It's like, when are people going to wake up and realize, hey, listen, you're being played here, okay? But this because that executive order was passed, we're getting to this point here. And as we go around, I'll show you the stuff from not just NYU Langone, but the connections between NYU Langone and the city administration. Why I think, and the bigger picture of why I personally think there's silence from above.
Spot on, brother. I think what we see right now is that people are far more used than they ever been. They're utilized, and people have become like, I think they're dumb swords, right? These people are swords by George Soros and these other organizations that are using these people as the blade to cut into legislation, to move the needle, to change issues, to move their agenda. And that's what and people are just, they have become useful idiots on all levels, including our medical personnel. I mean, medical personnel, law enforcement, things of essential needs, essential services, and medical is part of that. Law enforcement are supposed to remain apolitical at all times, right? What's most important and paramount is safety and preserving life. That should be the only concern when it comes to medical, law enforcement, or any other agency that is an essential service. And we've allowed politics to infect and inject everything, right? The premise of this podcast, which has now turned into a network, is about politics infecting and injecting into law enforcement. But we now see it on another level with medical personnel. And we see it with various agencies. We've seen it with media. We've seen it with television shows. We've even seen it with streaming, right? The aftermath of George Floyd, we've seen it on, as prevalent on Netflix. Shows banned. We've seen Paw Patrol banned. So we have censorship all around. So I think censorship and what's going on with ICE has a clear connection and a nexus, right? Censorship, the way people feel, control the narrative, perspectives. It all goes hand in hand with First Amendment speech, right? We've come to a point where people have this opposition they've created. They've also created and found a way to drive into people's emotions, and even medical personnel that were allowing politics actually infect. And the priority of safety is paramount, and preserving life has become secondary. And the mission is to actually serve politics first. So it's really sad at this point. And I think we say this often, and especially you do, Marlon. I think that both sides, the left and the right, are enjoying where this is going, especially the opposition to ICE. I think the left wants it, and I think the right wants it also.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just nuts, man. I just feel bad for everybody in the NYPD. I really do. I feel bad for ICE agents. I feel bad for law enforcement across this country. But at the same time, you have to be held accountable, and you have to understand the situation you're in. And the days of blindly following are over. Like, we're in a different time. This is not your daddy's America. We are in a completely different time. We don't have righteous leadership. We have self-serving leadership, and we have a lot of narrative and a lot of control throughout all this. So people just got to wake up. Another incident that came out recently was a cop was just indicted, accused of perjury, search warrant. And just from the details of the search warrant, like, they had done a search warrant. There's a firearm inside of a safe, and it's being alleged that the cop went and got the person's benefit card or ID card and threw it in the safe, and then said that, like, oh, that the ID was in the safe with the gun. So from my reading, how I understand it, and from what I read it briefly, so I could be a little bit off on this, but from how I understand it, it looked like what they're saying that the officer did was that he took the ID and put it in the safe so that now you could give ownership of that safe, and you could have a nexus between the safe and the ID, the safe and the perp. Don't ever do that. Like, don't ever try to fabricate anything. Who cares if something gets DP'd? It does not matter. You don't need to ever do anything. Because, like, here's the thing, right? Like, this cop is going to get brought up for perjury, could possibly serve jail time, definitely lose his job, more than likely lose his job. And at the end of the day, it probably was the dude's gun. You know what I mean? It probably was the dude's gun. Like, he didn't fabricate that fact. I didn't get that he was fabricating that. He was putting the nexus so that, oh, here's the nexus between the gun and the individual. So, like just a quick story. When I was a real young sergeant, I had went to, like, a domestic, and it was right at the turnover from the 4 to 12s to the midnights. So I was on the 4 to 12. So I get there, and the lady goes to me, look, my husband said he's going to kill me, and he's got a gun in that safe. And I'm like, who? And the safe's in the closet. I'm like, whose closet is it? She's like, it's both of ours. I'm like, whose safe is it? She's like, it's his. I'm like, do you have access to the safe? She's like, no, I can't get in it. I don't know the code. So, if any of you guys that are cops, like, I had to call the duty captain for that one, because I can't call legal, because legal's closed at that time. So I have to get permission from the duty captain, because legal's going to get overtime, right, if I call them. So, but I'm like, I call the duty captain. I'm like, look, this woman's saying there's a gun in there. I want to get a search warrant. I want to talk to the nighttime riding DA. I want to get a search warrant and take that safe. Like, I don't feel good. Like, I'm not leaving it there. I'm not leaving it there. And I even said to him, I said, regardless of what you tell me, I'm taking the safe. Like, so I'm just letting you know, like, I'm not leaving the safe here. I don't feel comfortable with this. This is like, he said he was going to shoot her. She's saying the safe there. He bolted before we got there. I'm not okay with any of this. And so I get legal on the phone, and legal's like, look, I'm not getting a judge on the phone. We're not calling the nighttime ride-in DA. We're not going to go ahead and look for the warrant. So I was like, okay. So what I did was I ripped the safe out, and I took the safe with me back to the command. And then we vouchered it, and I had ESU come. ESU came. They popped the safe open for me, and sure enough, there was a loaded firearm in there, not registered to anyone in the house. No one in the house had a firearm ID on them. And I did a open 61 for criminal possession of a weapon in the husband's name. We had grabbed him the next morning. And ultimately, the case was declined prosecution. Okay. They declined prosecution because they said I could not say that the husband actually owned the firearm and put the gun in there, even though the wife had told me that she had seen the gun only just that same evening, and she knew for a fact it was there, and it was a husband's safe and all that. They couldn't give him the charge of it because they didn't believe that there was a nexus there between him. I got made fun of by the squad. A lot of other bosses had shit to say, but who cares? Gun's not on the street. I didn't leave, and then that woman get murdered or her whole family murdered. Who cares? So what? Gun off the street. Case gets DP'd. I could put my head on the pillow at night. I slept fine that night. I slept fine the next night after the case got DP'd. I sleep fine today knowing that I did the right thing. And like so, and it's the same true for when you make an arrest. You have probable cause or you don't have probable cause. If you have probable cause, you make the arrest. If you don't, you don't. Who cares? What are you're going to get made fun of? You're going to have a DP. Everybody's going to have declined prosecution, whether you agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. So don't jeopardize your freedom, your integrity for anything, for nothing. It's not worth it. So.
Yeah. John's right. Yeah, I mean, I think that applies now to everyone in Western society. If you want to live in America that's very reminiscent of those times in Germany, right? You continue following orders as told. You continue not to think critically about the situation, and then we're most definitely going to be down that road where your speech is censored, and any sort of dissent is punished. Okay. And again, this goes out to not just NYPD, but in the case of what went on at NYU at that hospital, they clearly, based upon that article and the information we know as of now, it clearly seems that people went they crossed the line on it. And again, we had vague guidelines from the feds, and on top of that, you have memos from NYU, about that, and you have Hochul a couple of weeks ago who put out her plans for this year about public safety and just her agenda going forward, right? One of those includes the whole buffer zones, which she came out as a measure to counter the supposed removal of the sensitive areas from ICE enforcement. And by the way, the articles I read said that there's an internal the details on it, the exact details on it are in an internal memo in ICE that hasn't been revealed publicly. So again, that ambiguity for the public is a problem indeed. But this is her buffer zones. So you can see why all this ambiguity is kind of festering and creating those conditions on the ground level, which those cops experience, and then you see people who are already you already see mass hysteria there, and how this is feeding into that mass hysteria and the workers at that hospital. But it's like John said, people got to wake up, and you can't, you have to know when to draw the line and know where don't cross that line, especially if you don't want to end up in a society that the type of society we talked about.
Oh, and Eric, real quick, just to Mikey G, that's the point. You nailed it. That's what why the DA threw it out. The wife, I had her sign a consent to search form, but the DA said she did not have permission to give me the authority to take the safe. That was exactly why they threw it out. So there was no jurisdiction, but at the end of the day, I wasn't going to wake up the next morning and hear that she was dead. So I could care less.
Well, I got to be honest. I think it's an awesome story, and I've done similar things, and I think that it was great police work, and I think that it falls under exigent circumstances, because a huge part of Supreme Court cases is exigent circumstances. And what is an exigent circumstance? It's an immediate threat, right? And access, right? So does a potential person of interest or perpetrator have access to that case, that safe? Answer is yes. Is there an immediate imminent threat of her safety? Yes. I think the exigent circumstances were met. In my opinion, I think that was a terrible job by the ADA in that case. ADA, for anybody who doesn't show what that is, Assistant District Attorney. I think the Assistant District Attorney did a terrible job. I don't think that you needed that consent form either. I think it's which it wouldn't even matter, though, because I think the exigent circumstances based on Supreme Court cases like Warren versus Hayden, I think were met. So I think you did a good job. Awesome police work. I think they should have been prosecuted, right? do we normally just bust into a safe? If we went to an apartment, right, rhetorically speaking, say we went to an apartment and there was a gun on the table with a bag of Coke, and there's a safe nearby, and so at that point, we'll take the gun, we'll take the Coke, and we'll freeze the apartment. If there's anyone in there, we could remove them and then get the search warrant in the safe. But in this case, there was an immediate threat. The husband's going to come back home. He has access, and only he has access, which means she's a threat, right? She can't even access it to put that gun somewhere else. So I think it's awesome police work. Great job, but it's unfortunate we have some shitty ADAs in the city. It's true. We have ADAs that won't take a case. And sometimes the reality is some of these attorneys, not all of them, I worked with some of them that were fantastic, but some of them got a 70 in their class and they just passed. And they're really not good lawyers. They're working for the city and they're just not good lawyers. And they don't know themselves. I mean, I used to ask them all the time in housing, do you have the red book? And it just to kid around with them, because the red book was all the rules and regulations for NYCHA. And they have to be aware of that when they're attorneys and ADAs in those offices. So some of them are very good, but some of them aren't. Some of them just barely passed and just made it and couldn't get a job in the private sector. So, but awesome police work, brother. Outstanding. I wouldn't expect anything else from you.
And Crowita asks, like, what was the reason did they give for not authorizing the search warrant for that? Like, there really was none, dude. They just weren't going to call, like, they weren't going to call the judge. They didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't feel like it was important enough. And I was like, all right, well, I'm still thinking it's fucking safe. So, you know, and the thing is, like, why should I put myself in a bad situation to try to create a nexus to that gentleman so that the case sticks? Why would you do that? Who cares? This is what happened. This is what happened when I got there. This is what I did. This is what I observed. And let the chips fall where they may. It is what it is, you know, like, dude, honestly. And I'll tell you, a lot of the people that knew me and liked me, and that, like, the bosses at that time that, like, I started to get a pretty big name in Staten Island was because of shit like that. When things went wrong, and the same thing in Brooklyn South. It was because of when things didn't go perfectly, because guess what? Things don't go perfectly. Like, you know what I mean? And you shouldn't try to make them go perfectly either. It is what it is. Like, this is what happened. I got called here. This is what I observed. This is what I did. This is what the DA is saying. This is what I told the DA. This is what happened. And that's it. And sometimes those are your best moments to expose yourself, like your true character, who you are, your competence level, your ability to communicate, and your ability to show what's really wrong in the systems and stick points. You shouldn't shy away from shit like that, and you shouldn't try to change things to get a case to stick. Like, it's unnecessary. It's
John, in my opinion, it was just pure laziness. They didn't want to bother the judge. It's probably, I'm assuming it was probably late at night, and that, to me, it's just pure laziness. I mean, plenty of times I've taken confidential informants through the back door of a courthouse, and I walked them through, like, like almost like a maze in the courthouse where no one would see them, and then take them into a closed room to draw up a warrant. I mean, and sometimes I had to make these informants wait, like in a coffee shop for hours till I could call them, like, okay, you can meet me at the back door now, and then bring them up. Marlon, you know what I'm talking about? Bring them up. Yeah. Through the back door, or, find like a way where nobody could see them, and then bring them into a closed room and have this judge sign off. And all right, your name's on the line. You're bringing this informant, and half the times the crackheads, to sign a warrant. So just pure laziness to me, honestly, pure laziness, but good police work.
Well, yeah, quick tangent. I think that whole, by the way, I think that whole process is just, in New York City, it's just so messed up, because I had to take CIs to the freight elevator,
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. And there were other workers there. I'm like, they know I'm a cop. They see me walking up with this guy who's clearly a street dude.
And they know where you're going.
Yeah. I'm like, I that used to get me so angry. Why don't we have why isn't there a specific elevator that I can take? I gotta walk him through I tell you, New York City is just so backwards when it comes to law enforcement that if you talk to other agencies and let them really know how it is, they probably be like, I can't believe this. I can't. Even our guys themselves. I used to get pissed off when Narco would take. We had a great CI in Brooklyn North, right? If you're in Brooklyn North, you know who she is. Okay, she's a short lady. She's a short lady.
Well,
You
I used to
7-7
say,
Narco guys know what I'm talking about, right?
well, I used to say my
I'll
second
leave it at
career
that.
is going to be a CI because she's probably rich. I mean, half the times I used to have CI to be like, I'm on vacation in Florida. I'm like, what? You're on vacation? That's great.
Yeah. Dude, this lady has been a CI for 20 something years. I don't know if she's still there again because I'm not there, but she's been a CI for 20 something years. This lady should be getting a pension from the NYPD. She's been there so long. Okay.
He's got more footballs than the cops.
Yeah. But she's great. She's amazing at her job, right? And when Narco used her, I got one day I saw Narco had her switch cars in the parking lot. And right next to the 7-7 is a perp building where some of the perps from down a couple blocks down, they have family there. Bro, I lost my mind when I saw that. I'm like, what that you're having a lady just walk willy-nilly in the parking lot,
Crazy.
You couldn't go to the other side of the lot in the back and have her switch cars. You just have her get out and walk. So this is also one of the reasons I didn't want to go to Narco, even though I could have done it. I would have kicked ass in Narco if I got, because I already did that as the FIO.
Oh, yeah, you would.
Because I didn't like the way they were. I didn't like the way they did things, Whereas Intel, it's like I think we were more. We were less a little less, not to insult you Narco guys, because don't get me wrong, I love the 7-7 Narco team and I wanted to go there, because I actually put in an application, right? And I had the interviews lined up too, but I canceled it for Intel. I love the 7-7 Narco team, but I just prefer the way Intel did warrants and way we did our case folders and the way our fives looked a lot better. Okay. And if my 5 came in like a lot of the Narco guys, the FIO coordinator would blow a gasket. Okay. I'd be out of the FIO office,
In defense of those Narco guys, I gotta say that guy was probably working like 20 something hours straight. They work hard. They do.
Yeah, they do. No insult to Narco guys. I love the Narco guys. I'm just saying that maybe it's me just coming into the FIO program, but I just love the way Intel and the FIOs did our case folders and did our workups before we hit the door. We knew.
Shout out to.
I think we knew a lot more about who was in there before we hit the door.
Shout out to Timmy J. Cox and Shane Bowen. Both of them were FIOs. Awesome, man. Awesome, and yeah, I mean those guys.
I honestly hated it though. I hated CIs. I hate signing up. I hated being the FIO. I was like forced into that position. I was like, I don't want this position. I was like, I just like doing anti-crime. And like I remember my lieutenant. He's like, well, he was basically like, too effing bad. You're it. Like, too bad. You're it. And I'm like, well, I really don't want to do it. I don't like doing this type of work. I like going out in the street. Like, I don't want to like do this. And it was a lot of the things like you just highlighted, like signing up the CIs, bringing them to get warrants. The whole system was incompetent, man. I was like, I really felt like I was, first of all, half the time that I interviewed someone, I rarely believed what they were telling me. I rarely ever believed it. And so that was like, I had a big problem with that too. Like I didn't sign up a lot of people because I didn't believe, because I was literally like, I remember one time I'm like interviewing someone and the guy starts telling me about how his brother-in-law has an illegal firearm in the house. And I'm like, wait. Why are you telling me that your brother-in-law has? And because I'm sitting there and I'm going, in my head, I'm like, I would never do this. Like, you know what I mean? Why is this like, what's happening here? Or like, someone telling me about someone dealing drugs. And I'm like, this guy banged his girlfriend. Like, like when you would know all this shit, like what's the motive behind this? And so it was that. And I felt like not only that I didn't trust the CIs, but when I did actually sign a CI up, now I felt like his life was in my hands. And I didn't feel like I could control any of those factors. Like I could control these leaks from getting out of not only the New York City Police Department, but every other agency that I have to deal with now, and all of the other shit that we had to do, and even just the way we would do buys and the way we would do things, like, you know, it just looked like it's just I wasn't comfortable with any of it. I didn't like any of it, and the same's true for like the undercovers. I give you guys a lot of credit. You guys got a lot of balls, man, because I didn't trust anything. I was like, I'm not going out there on the streets of New York and like pretending to be somebody I'm not. And I don't trust the police department enough to keep me safe. And I don't trust them to keep my family safe enough, you know? And so like, I was always like, I don't want to play a role. I grew up in this city. I know a lot of people in this city. I don't think I could do that. I don't think I would ever be a good fit for that. And you know, I had got asked to do a lot of like shit like in Italian communities, and I was like, "What are you, crazy?" I was like, "I would never, like, I can't do that. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to pretend to be an undercover. I'm a cop. I'm not going to pretend to be anybody else." And I give you guys a lot of credit that did that, but it's not for me. And honestly, I think I had a lot of fun in the FIO position, but it was not my favorite. I liked anti-crime much better.
I mean, Mom, would you agree? I felt like you know, because as a special ops and anti-crime, I dealt with the FIOs, and we did the search once. We worked together a lot, and we would build rapport with people out there, and we would bring the CIs in, you know, and the FIOs were great, and we brought them in, and we would build a relationship with these people too, but more of a rapport. But I don't think you ever really trust them. But I think money is what builds a trust, right? They're attached to the money. I mean, there were plenty of times someone asked you a great question. They asked Marlon, like, what did you pay them? Sometimes, like, when we got a tip on an apartment about a legal firearm, they got $1,000 cash for each gun. And then if they already knew about some drugs that were there, they would get $300 cash. And then if there was stuff that was incidental or just happened to be more stuff than we anticipated, we would give them sometimes another $300 cash. So, I mean, sometimes they would get close to $2,000 for one hit, you know, on a morning. And sometimes, you know, the FIOs were good. Maybe we would go and do 2 or 3 on one morning. You know, and the FIOs and PSA 4, they were awesome too. Shout out to my brothers that were there, yeah, I think the FIOs do an awesome job. I don't know what they're doing now. Hunter's, he has the cash money. Money talks, you know, I mean, and I agree with you, John. I used to say the same thing. Like, some of these CIs, you know, they would give up like their mothers and their brothers. I mean, like, it's amazing how the money was so important. And even though you don't trust them, I'm sure, Marlon, you did the same thing, right? Every time you get a warrant, you have to verify all the information that they give and make sure that it's credible, right? You go to the apartment, you do an assessment on the door, and you're not just doing it after, you know, one buy at an apartment. You got to do several buys just to make sure it's legit. So it's an interesting relationship.
Yeah. CIs lie all the time. 100%. They lie all the time.
To everybody, right?
Yeah. That's why a lot of times you have another CI to, like, you know, go and try and verify the info, and you kind of narrow the pathway that a CI can lie, you know, and that's something else that helps you, you know. But I don't know how it is now, but I've heard they wanted, you know, when I was on the FIO, the FIST team, they wanted us to put cameras on CIs, you know, and so I don't know how it is now. It might be even worse. And like I even had one DA who called me when I had already left the FIO office. I was in Intel, and she wanted me to give up the sergeant's CI. She goes, I want his name. She was in the I forgot her name, but she's infamous in there as well in the Brooklyn. She was a bureau chief in Brooklyn. She wanted me to give up I'm like, it's not my CI, it's the sergeant. Go talk to the sergeant, you know. And she was like, I want him. I want his name. I'm like, what the heck, lady? I'm not giving you the info. You know, go talk to the sergeant. Bro, it was. But
you know what they say, right, Marlon? You're only like at the field intelligence. You're only as good as the CIs. So like the CI is an appointment for the whole entire operation. It's crazy, right? And you know, shout out to these FIOs. I think it's much harder right now. I think bail reform and discovery laws really destroyed the whole CIA operation. That really took a dent into it because, I mean, the worst part, you said it, John, like the scariest part is, God forbid, something happens to your CI. No one in Intel or Narco wants anything to happen to the CI. That's the scariest thing, right? You protect their lives at all costs. But I think with the discovery laws, really made people apprehensive from being a CI. I think that really hurt the operation. Shout out to the FIOs, man. Shout out to you, Marlon, for doing it, because these guys were managing sometimes 9, 10, sometimes up active as far as 12 CIs. That's a lot of people to manage. You're basically, they almost like you manage them, right? You work for them and you have to, it's tough.
Yeah. I sucked in that role. I was not good in it. I was like, fuck. I was like, this shit's not for me, dude. It's just not.
You don't have the patience for it. Chop, you lying to me.
But shout out to the FIOs and the narco guys, okay? Because again, like John and Eric said, dealing with CIs is not that easy. And I still think that the FIO office, even with all the stuff that's happened, I still think that it's the best gig in the precinct, and I will stand by that. So
no way. I love crime.
Me too. I think anti-crime any day. Listen, get someone.
Those PIs, I'll go out on the street. I'm not fucking fuck that. I'll bring you the people to sign up.
I think the FAOs had too much patience, man. It's like, anti-crime. You pick somebody up, you flip them that night, you go get a sight warrant, and then you don't have to see them anymore. You can hand them off to the FIO. The FIOs have to constantly. I would find, Marlon, did this happen to you too? I would find the FIOs would just have to fend phone calls. They would get calls to the CI. Sometimes they would be like their confidants, just like they had a bad day, and they end up calling the FIOs. And I was like, wow, you guys do a lot.
To the union dollars. Yeah. And then when their CI is getting collared too, they're getting calls for that. Yo, this guy says he works for you. Fucking.
Those guys getting calls 2, 3 in the morning.
I was good as bad cop. I was never good as a good cop. Like, I was just good. Like, I'll go and find you on the street, lock you up, and then I don't want to deal with you after that.
I have to say, I'm 100% behind that. When they started to track the FIOs, that should have been done years before that. Those guys were doing. Shout out to you, Marlon, really doing awesome work. The fact that they, and shout out, they got, that was a great deal, right? Because you got detective specialist, so people might not know it. It's crazy. If you're a detective specialist or a detective investigator, it's the same pay grade. But if you're a detective specialist, you still keep your chart days. I'd rather be a specialist. You're a detective investigator. You don't keep that. It's crazy how that happens. I don't know how they allowed it, but whatever.
Cop Watch says no snitching is a gangster code of conduct. Saying stop snitching is a cop calling cop gangster. So pick your poison unless you're Louis Eppolito. So it's funny. Like I was watching an episode of the 10-4 Tavern, and Pete Forcelli, he's he's the whistleblower behind Operation Fast and Furious. He wrote the book The Deadly Path. He's the co-host on 10-4 Tavern. And he was like, he got both ends of it, right? Because he was a homicide detective. He worked in the NYPD. So he saw people that were going to jail, that they interviewed, that would give up information or wouldn't give up information. And like, he broke down like the difference between somebody going to Rikers and someone facing like city time versus someone going to federal prison and someone going to federal jail where they're not going to be close to home. They're going to get no visits. They're going to be sent to Arizona, or they're going to be sent to another part of the country. And he was talking about how the people, the hardest hardened perps, would just flip on a dime the minute they knew they were getting fed dime. They would give up everything, and so I always laugh with the whole, oh yeah, it's no snitching, no snitching. Those days are gone, man. Those days of like the Sonny Franceses that'll do 50 years in prison and not say a word. Those like they just don't build, like they don't. Like we often talk about here, how like masculinity has been pulled out of society. It's not just with law enforcement and the military. It's with the perps too. Like, you guys are all a bunch of fucking rats. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
John, Marlon, I wonder if you agree. I wonder if you agree too, John. I thought the toughest perps to crack were women. I've had women plenty of times. They would take the gun for their man. We know damn well that she never touched it, right? But she would do it and you couldn't crack them. I'm telling you, hardened criminals we cracked, but some of those women, man, you couldn't get through them. I don't know, John. I don't know if you had the same experience, but some of the women, they were like tight-lipped. They were more than the men. Like they were harder than the men.
Yeah, we dealt with a lot of older women, you know, and the thing I realized is that women make the best CIs, you know, they really do. I won't go into it here because I'm sure there's some perps walking here watching this, but I'll just say this
right now.
I'll just say this: if you're a perp, you better treat your woman well, okay? Because once she has a grudge against you, you're done. You're done, okay? So.
What's that about a scorned woman? What is that? There's no
right
like a woman, a scorned woman, or a woman, right? Like, I would.
Half have no fury like the scorn of a woman, right?
There you go. Hell had no fury. There you go. That's the one.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, and they'll wait to get back at you. You know.
Dude. But anybody here in the chat, if you did debriefs, let me know. I found interviewing debriefing women. Woo! A lot harder than men, because when men are by themselves, and eventually they crack because even like the biggest perps, the weight is on them, right? If they have kids, they still got to pay for them. They got to be the breadwinner and take it. But man, women, oh man, good luck, dude. Some of those women, they were not giving anything up. Unbelievable.
So what's with 2 hours 35 minutes? Anything you guys want to get into that we didn't discuss here, or anything? Anything? Super chats, Marlon? Anything we missed? Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me find this. I just want to say that, like, I've noticed, you know, just to go back to quickly about the hospital thing, because we didn't finish that up. You know, it's not lost on me the silence that's coming from like Tish on this. I don't know. Maybe I missed something. I didn't see any press release from her about this.
Nothing.
And to that, I just want to point out that I'm trying to find it here, but I just want to point out that the Tish family itself has a lot of connections to NYU. By the way, the Tish family, again, to the point where one of the hospitals is named after Tish. Okay, and it's named after Lawrence Tish. Okay, but also. There's the Tisch School of Arts, which was also funded by Robert Tisch, which was Lawrence Tisch's brother. Okay, but it gets deeper than that. Okay, because the Tisch family. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, you got a CIA at the hospital.
Huh?
You got a CIA at the hospital.
Well, here's the thing, right? The Tisch family is also on the board of not just NYU, but on the board of NYU Health. They're trustees. And one of them, I think, is even an executive in the NYU Board of Health. I put it up there. So I don't understand why there isn't I understand why there isn't a statement from Tish, because she knows she's involved in this. But because the family has such an oversized influence on NYU, I would think that they should be exercising that will on NYU and getting them to apologize for this. And in particular, because there are fines for refusing to treat a patient at a hospital, and it violates not only the Hippocratic Oath, but it violates NYU policy. It violates federal laws. If you're a public hospital receiving Medicare, you can't refuse treatment of a emergency treatment for anybody who walks in. It violates state laws and it violates city laws. And if you add up all the fines in this case, we're getting to $500,000 here. So it's not just because her family is involved and her aunt is on the health board. Her aunt and there's a Thomas.
Are you saying that money means something?
Yeah. So
dude,
yeah.
Wild.
So Jessica Tisch didn't become police commissioner because she was an awesome invisible cop. She's not potentially going to run for governor because because she's awesome.
Lieutenant governor.
Lieutenant governor. Sorry, correct me.
Yeah.
Nah, dude, it's wild, bro. That whole thing. It's like when you really think about it, like and the hand she has over the media also. I mean, the family literally controls New York City. I've been reading The Power Broker.
Oh,
It's about Robert Moses. And so Robert Moses, like, I know he gets criticized a lot for like development, and they say that he was very racist. I'm not that far along in the book, but the points that stand out to me in the book is he developed the civil service test and the civil service system because he believed that civil service was like the new aristocracy, like where it was like Britain, like you were basically gifted these jobs, right? Like your family controlled who got what jobs. And like there was like kind of no way in for like poor working class people. So he believed in the civil service system as a way like that could alleviate that, and that everyone would be given a chance because, obviously me, Marlon, and Eric would have never got into the New York City Police Department without the civil service examination, right? Because we don't know anybody, we're not part of the New York City aristocracy. And, it's like, all right, John's the dumb cousin. Make him a captain in the precinct. Like, so they did, like he's too stupid to go to school. All right, to make him have him run into fires, like he'll be good at that, like so.
Hence Kaz Daughtry.
So they put the civil service process in there to like so that working class regular people could basically rise through the ranks of poverty and get into middle class and get these jobs, right? But thinking about what's going on now, it's like the aristocracy is really still there, but it's at the top of all these agencies, the true leadership of these agencies. It's like, it's still there. It's still like the power brokers still exist in New York City today. And Jessica Tisch is the shining example of that. Like, there is no reason she was ever the sanitation commissioner. She was ever the deputy commissioner of Information Technology Bureau. She was ever the police commissioner in the NYPD. It is solely because of the power her family has. And so, yeah, it's a pretty interesting book. I'm only a few chapters in, but that was just one thing. And just watching her name on that building just kind of like stands out in my head.
Yeah, why did Jessica Tisch take the civil service exam?
Yeah, it's great because she didn't have to.
Exactly.
And same reason that Daughtry didn't have to take supervisory civil service of that, right? Like it's because you're close to the king, you're part of the aristocracy, and we're gonna give you the power, and we're gonna give you the titles. You don't need to earn them. Schleps like us, we could get to the rank of captain.
Easy. That's racist. Easy. That's racist.
And just hey, look, there's a lot of shit on the internet. A lot of people sent us a bunch of clips about, I don't even want to name it, but like, look, here's the thing. We've never said that anyone is racist. We literally merely pointed out flaws in an argument where a person said that if you run a mile and a half run, if a mile and a half run was put in place in the New York City Police Department to keep black and brown people out of the New York City Police Department. We merely said that if you believe that is a racist argument because you're saying black and brown people can't run. So we've never called anyone a racist, and we've never went back and forth and besmirched anyone's character until it happened to us numerous times while using this platform to give yourself credibility and bolster your name. Did we give name to a certain civil rights attorney who forgot he was one in 2021 during the COVID mandates? No, people already knew who he was, right? But like, we're not racist, and yet we keep being smeared as such, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it just shows that there's no argument there because we've opened the platform to literally everyone and invited that person to come on, and they're pretending that like, oh, I'm not going to come on because I'm not going to give you guys credit. Like, okay, you're not going to come on because you have no argument, and you're going to get shown that your argument really doesn't hold any weight. It's not because we're abusive or we're going to attack you or anything like that. So yeah, to saying that like you're not going to name us and all this shit because we're giving you credit, like I mean, honestly, you should pay us for all the times that you came on here and the times I ever even retweeted you or any of us retweeted you, because your account wouldn't have shit if it wasn't for that. So I just want to
we
say
should
that.
send them a bill.
Like all the people that attack us as racist but won't come on the show to like explain why really shows like their true character and how they've been besmirched us. So I just think that whole thing's ridiculous. And to watch people not in agreement really fucking pisses me off. But
We should do an episode called The Finest Unfiltered Besmirched.
besmirched.
Yeah.
It's coming. All right.
Yeah,
Coffee
yeah.
and donuts.
Yeah, and just more facts for anyone who thinks that we don't give facts here. So
All right, here we
you
go.
can clearly see it for yourself, guys. Don't take our word for it. Do your own research. But the
Yeah, it's
facts
true.
are the facts, and they're here, right? They're all there. So
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So coffee and donuts. What do we got? Oh, we're light today, people. What's going on? Steven DS. He says, "Is John drinking moonshine from the glass mason jar this morning?" was I rambling? It's old solid H2O, baby. You know.
No
Oh,
mushroom coffee? What's going on here?
I got my mushroom coffee too. I got that.
Oh,
You know.
you must have to feel like a racist. You know, listen, I love coffee. I drink it all day, but I will not drink coffee when I'm doing the podcast. I learned my lesson. One time I had coffee, I had to keep getting up to go to the bathroom. So, water for me.
Yeah. Another thing before we get to the next super chat, huge storms coming to the whole Northeast, like crazy, like that huge storm.
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to New York this weekend. I am not coming. So I'm just letting you know. It was 68 degrees yesterday. I had a t-shirt on. So I'm canceling that.
You keep your thin blood ass in Florida, right?
I am canceling that trip. I am not coming. Thank you. You can
Florida,
keep
are
that
you in
shit.
your basement? Oh, by the way, are you in your basement?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's gonna be cold as shit. So so everybody stay warm. Make sure you're not out there. If you're bundled up or whatever. It's gonna be 70 here today. So I don't, feel bad for me. It gets a cool brisk 56. But yeah, that looks like some crazy ass storm that's coming.
Oh my god, yeah. A cop watch even mentioned it here. It's coming.
yeah,
And
yeah, it could be worse. I saw somebody in the chat. What's his name? The Truth, is it? Who's from mentioned Alberta. Hey, it could be a lot worse, guys. We could be in Alberta.
True.
Think about it. I feel sorry for Canadians, right? Like, there's no where to get away to get warm. Like, at least if you're an American, you can just go to Florida, maybe parts of Texas. But if you're in Canada, like, where do you go to get warm? There's nowhere. Yeah. If you can't cross, if you don't have a passport and can't cross the border, you're screwed.
Yeah. You go kill a furry animal, Eric, and then you know.
Alberta's going to be the 51st state.
Yeah, I think so too.
Crazy crap. And then Stephen S. Marlon's case. How do you know this is not the same situation? Marlon talked about the individual. Oh, all right. We addressed this already. The shaky boss. Yeah. Okay. We addressed that. So, all right. And then Modern Samurai. Morning, gents. Thank you, Modern Samurai. Quality show today. Tough issues require tough conversations. Fight the good fight. Stay safe. Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm
We
choking.
appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, Modern Samurai. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I guess that's it, people. I mean, it is what it is. Everybody stay warm this weekend. Be careful if you're traveling. Be careful with all the insanity out there. And for those of you that are still on the job, like, take it where the hell it's coming from, Like, really, like, your oath to that Constitution should go above your loyalty to a political figure. Like, apolitical. Like, you're at that protest. There's anarchists there. There's people you don't agree with. There's people you do agree with. There's reporters there. Just look, you're not there to make people feel good. You're not. It doesn't matter. I mean, to me, any protest I went to, I don't care if I agreed with you or not. You were all annoying. I didn't want to deal with you. And I just follow the law and we won't have a problem. I'm not going to make up the law, give you a summons for it. And at the same portion, like, if you're being asked to investigate someone because they're critical of a policy or a person or a police department, that's not your job, dude. You're not the morality police. It's just, you're not. Like, that's what it is. So, you know.
I just want to mention real quick. This is interesting. AFL puts here that as of January 2025, IAB Chief Thompson no longer active on the 50A, not listed on NYPD profile. Therefore, he must be a deputy commissioner civilian, but still in uniform. Interesting. Shaking my head.
Well, again, you know, this is the problem, and again, you know, the reason like this whole like little thing happened was because we were pointing out the clear and blatant fraud in the pension system, right? And you know, I love the constant like, why do you guys care? It's like, oh, I care because I left $400,000 in there, and I want to make sure that I'm going to get what I worked for and what I put in there, and so. You know, we need to look that up. We'll look into that further. But clearly, the example of the blatant misuse of it, in my opinion, is the case of Louis Molina. Like, it makes absolutely no sense that he bent every single rule, listed himself as a director in the New York City Police Department in order to take his large salary as the deputy commissioner of citywide administrative services, DCAS, and put that into a police pension fund. That I'm sorry, that is not proper. I don't, and that's why this all started, is because we pointed that out. We pointed out the ones that weren't as egregious, where it was, we're talking about the commissioner of probation, Juanita Holmes, where they carried her an extra 2 years into the police pension fund. It's still, in my opinion, is not accurate. It's not the way it's went in the past. And we were told, well, we're only saying things because of the color of these people's skin, but it's inaccurate, because we went back and we looked at the past people, and no one had done that in the past. And the laws that were being given as to justify what's happening don't cover what's happening. And the pension law, and there has been silence, radio silence. And again, this shit's not going away. I'm just letting you know. You will be getting hit with a bill at some point. You will possibly be getting hit with a federal investigation at some point. Like, I will gladly testify. I will gladly testify as to what is observed on records and what has been done in the past, because it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, this pension fund we paid into right now, it's completely, fully self-funded. Nobody pays into this shit except for us. Let's keep it that way, because it's the only way you're going to continue to collect your pension. And you don't let little political grifters. You don't get a large police pension because you're friendly with a mayor. It's not a reward for political allies. This is your reward, is your pension, is because of your work that you put in, and the years you put in, and the years you sacrifice to the city of New York. It's not for anything else. It's not for anyone to benefit from. And even the shit with Kaz Daughtry, you wanted to give him the titles, you wanted to make him a civilian, then make him a civilian. You know, when his time as assistant commissioner didn't count. His time as a deputy commissioner of operations counted. His time as the deputy mayor didn't count. He should have to put those years in, and he should have to, his salary goes back as to what it was. This is absolutely ridiculous. And that money did not go into that pension system, because no one has labeled out how it has. And so it's completely wrong, dude. It's completely wrong. And if that's the truth with Thompson, then shame on you too. What type of integrity do you have?
Yeah. You know, how ironic. This is what the appointed chief of IAB by the infamous Jessica Tisch, who's supposed to eradicate corruption. And we're back. We're full circle here. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. Sorry, Mom. What are you saying?
No, I was just to just to comment on that. I think a reckoning is coming, and I keep saying it. It's on its way. And look at this Mamdani administration's already talking about. They're already blaming Eric Adams for the budget mess. Now, Eric Adams contributed a lot to it, but the budget mess, it goes even beyond Eric Adams, right? He furthered it, but it's there, and they're looking to find a scapegoat to it. And I've said before, in trying, when they start looking at the numbers, they're going to backtrack and try and figure out who took what, where. And this is why the reckoning is coming. Because if they don't backtrack and find out who got excess money, who took advantage of the system, then they're going to have to fill in the gaps in those budget holes. And those gaps include the solvency ratio of the pension fund. So, you know, if Kaz and Molina think they're going to walk out the door and with unearned money for the pension system, I got news for them. That reckoning is coming, and it's almost there. The fact that they're openly talking about the 2 billion gap that we have this year and the 12 billion that's next year means that those problems are starting to surface. And in addition to that, I talk a lot about macroeconomics on here, and it's because what the federal government themselves is telling us is that a change is coming too. Because, you guys should watch some videos for what's happening at Davos, because this guy, Howard Lutnick, is our Secretary of Commerce. And he's basically stating what we've been talking about on here, that change is coming and easy money is gone, and about the end of globalism as we knew it. And the problem for New York City is a lot of globalism came through New York City. And if that easy money is no longer going to be there and we have to go back to making stuff in this country, then what do we do about the gaps that are there right now? So they're going to have to be solved somehow. Okay. So again, that come to Jesus, that mythical come to Jesus moment that I keep talking about is coming.
Well, it's really all hitting the tipping point. Mondani's first 2 weeks in office, he started talking about bad landlords, and he was going to go after bad landlords because, a lot of people are saying that his administration is going to try to confiscate property from the bad landlords, right? Who they deem the bad landlords. But, Frank Morano had put out a great post today, City Councilman Frank Morano. He had labeled out that NYCHA is the project buildings in New York City, right? Poor working class people live in those buildings. They have 600,000 open work orders. 600,000. And it's a clear highlight of the incompetence of not only Zohran Mamdani, who's only been in office for a few weeks. It's a clear incompetence of Eric Adams and the clear, utter incompetence of Bill de Blasio, because I guarantee there are work orders in there from Bill de Blasio's first term that were never looked into. And so the people that are worried about your property can't they can't even look after their own, right? Who the hell is New York City to say anything? I'm not going to call out the speck in my brother's eye when I have a log in my own, right? But New York City has trees growing out of their eyes, and they're like, oh, look at that little thing right there. Oh, look, you didn't have the proper garbage can. That's another shady thing that's happening too. Maybe we'll get into that at a later date. But like, there's big problems, and it's all coming to a tipping point. And I mean, just right there and then alone, there's 600,000 work orders that are outstanding in NYCHA. There is no NYCHA resident that shouldn't be infuriated with everyone who's held that seat in the last 16 years, because that is just sheer incompetence. It's like and forget even the incompetence of it. It really shows the lack of care they have for working class and poor people in New York City. It's really disgusting, man. It's absolutely disgusting. And the billions of dollars that they've given to illegals solely under Eric Adams. That was Eric Adams, right? And he still even offered another $100 million for legal representation for them just months ago. But I think, there's big problems in New York City, and we have to start calling it out. And, there's so much money in this country, and there's so much money in this city that's been wasted. We could literally live in paradise if they just used this money properly and money was used properly. Instead, they just literally lit it on fire. They lit it on fire, and now it's going to come home to roost. Like, wait, what did we do with all that money? How come we don't have any more of it? What's happening here? Why is everything falling down around us? And it's because the money that was there for all of that infrastructure has been pillaged, and it's been pillaged for over 2 decades. And it's about time people start really paying attention to what the hell's going on in New York City. So,
yeah, $78 billion, guys. That's that backlog of the repairs they need right now. $78 billion. Where's that money coming from? I don't know. But
they're gonna soon look to kick people out more than and tear these buildings down before they look to do anything with that and put up condos.
Absolutely. Yeah, already happening, as a matter of fact, in Chelsea. Yeah.
Yep.
Spot on.
Yep. All right, peoples. All right, let's get out of here. Last two, NYPD 8311. He says, ironic, the trolls in this chat don't have the balls to be an NYPD MOS, or the ones that need the police the most when they're getting their ass kicked. 100%, dude. You know, it's always, I'm like, ask how many cops, how many times they called 911 in their life. But yet there are people that think like 911's their own personal concierge service or 311. And yet you get there and they're doing nothing but crapping all over you. Like, dude, you call like it's your own personal concierge. Like, it's ridiculous. And then Naked Coffee Channel, thank you for being here, brother. You're late to roll call. We can give you command discipline. But we'll keep it all for the $10. But he says, I just got here. Welcome. So, all right, peoples. All right, let's wrap it up and let's get out of here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, guys. We appreciate you like always. And we had a chat was on fire today, and I think it was pretty lively, So
I love the
chat.
chat.
Have a great
Shout
weekend, and see you next week.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Marlon. I didn't realize you were still talking.
No.
I love the chat. Shout out to the chat. I appreciate friends and listeners. Like, share, and subscribe. Finest Unfiltered. And if you have not checked out 10-4 Tavern yet, you really put on a hell of a show. Great interview yesterday by Ron Layson. Check it out. Executive Perspective. I'm sorry, 2 days ago. Wow, the week flies. I didn't even realize it's Friday already. So listen, thank you, everyone. Finest Unfiltered. Enjoy your weekend, of course. We'll be back Monday as always, and I will be a year older tomorrow. So everyone, take care. Thank you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?